Hello and welcome to the Zwift World Series Racing Show. I'm Nathan Gary, your host, commentator for this week's Elite Race number 4 of the Zwift World Series. We're resuming the Zwift World Series with Elite Race number 4 today, and Elite Race number 5 coming up in 2 weeks' time on April 24th. Today we'll be watching all the action of Elite Race number 4, and it's the men up first, followed by the women a bit later on. Both will be taking on the Shisa Shakedown route in McCurry Islands. Well, to join me today as co-host and commentator, Hannah Walker. Hannah, super excited to get back into some Zwift World Series with race number 4.
Oh, it's been a couple of months, hasn't it? But I'm very much looking forward to getting back into this and seeing how race 4 and race 5 unfold, Nathan. When you take a look at the start list of both the men's and women's races, it's absolutely stacked. So I can't wait to see how this long race really does unfold. And of course, well, why don't we take a little look? Have a bit of a refresher because it has been a couple of months. And let's take a look at the lowdown of the Zwift World Series and what you can expect. Each round of the Zwift World Series kicks off with the open qualifiers. These races are open to any Zwifter from any team who has completed the pre-verification process with no field size limits. All open qualifiers take place on the same course as the Elite race, and for race 4, this is the brand new Shisa Shakedown in McCurry Islands. The racers will take on a scratch race format, with the qualified riders progressing to the Elite race in 2 weeks' time. Here they'll join Series Pass riders formed of 3 riders from 8 invited teams, who placed highest in last year's Zwift Grand Prix, and those who earned Series Passes in races 1, 2 and 3. Series Pass riders do not need to go through any open qualifiers and can race all Elite races in the Zwift World Series. In the Elite race, there will be prize money at 2 preems, 1 sprint and 1 KOM, as well as prize money for the top 10 finishers. Riders who represent a team will receive points based on their best performing top 3 riders. Teams can try and boost their chances for this classification by qualifying as many team members as possible through the open qualifiers. In the Zwift World Series Elite races, new series passes are available for any riders that do not already have them for coming in the top 10 or winning either preem. So any qualifier that performs well in the Elite race can also punch their ticket to the rest of the series. There really is a lot at stake. There are also some great series-wide prizes. In the individual classification overall, there will be prize money for the top 10 and prize money overall in the team classification for the top 10 placed teams.
Before heading to round number 4 of the Zwift World Series, let's recap on where things stand after race number 3 and take a look at the individual and the team classifications. In the top 20 for the men's individual, you can see Ollie Jones sitting at the top with Jasper Paradine sitting in 2nd, Joe Perot in 3rd place, Martin Mertens in 4th, Riccardo Piniza, the Italian, in 5th place, followed up by Nicky Hug. The Zwift Games overall winner, Neil Ferret, in 7th, probably going to be working his way up with good form. Lionel Viasen in 8th, and Adrian Legriffon, the newcomer, watch out for him to try and make some moves today, as well as Johan Noren. That's your top 10 so far. And then in 11th place, it is going to be Richard Berry, Gel Power, Thomas Thrall, your current rating Canadian national champion, Mads Buster here as far as Marcus Duval, Johannes Rendrup Keating. It's going to be Arnie Jacobs, Yunsei Honda, Mikael Plantheru, and Ed Laverick sitting in 20th place.
I stacked top 20 there, Nathan. Let's take a little look at the top 10 in the team standings. It's Next Esports powered by Insured, who sit top of the standings. They've got 27 points, on Abus Synergy. Coalition are in 3rd, Movistar in 4th, followed by Hexagon, Restart, powered by Alex Coe, Team Swedish Zwifters, Wahoo Esports, CryoWad ET, and running out the top 10 currently with 315 points. That's Team Castelli, powered by Elite.
Well, the open qualifier that happened back in November and provides some crazy racing with attacks, breakaways, catches, and big sprints to the finish line. Let's take a quick look at the highlights from the men's open qualifier.
So now we head into race 4, the Shisa Shakedown route. Nathan, should we take a little look at what's on offer on today's route?
Yeah, it's a good course, Hannah. Let's take a look at this. It's race number 4. It's a scratch race on the Shisa Shakedown route. The distance is 53.3 kilometers with an elevation gain of 557 meters. This route starts in Umezi, the latest Makuri Islands expansion, navigating the multiple islands, and then heads to Nyokyo through the caves, we like to call them the Bat Caves. After the fast straights and twisting turns, the riders will head up to the rooftops, where they will pick up an aero power-up. Very draftable climb, though, for sure. Riders will then race into the Makuri countryside and climb up toward the castle and then to the temple KOM at the highest point on the route before riding downhill back towards Umezi for the final kilometers on the route. The final kick on the route will be the climb to the Shisa Sprint, where riders will be sprinting to the line. Before that, though, remember, there is the corkscrew dirt climb. Maybe some moves will be made there. Also on the route, there are 2 preems. One sprint preem at the alley sprint pretty early on, 14.9 kilometers into the race, and one climb preem on the Temple KOM at 37.7 kilometers into the race.
There's plenty of places to make up the race, hey, Nathan, with the tax. There's certainly a lot of places to cause a stir. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a long race, too. And one thing I definitely want to highlight about this course while we were looking through that route is the climb from the bottom all the way to the top of the Tempo KOM. Prior to actually hitting the dirt, there is from the start of the castle all the way to the top of the Tempo KOM, it's essentially, I don't know, I got to say, it's got to be about 20 to 15 minutes of total climbing. If somebody wants to make this a really difficult course and not just wait for that dirt climb, you could essentially try and do a bottom to top with a little bit of a risk from the start of that lowest elevation in the countryside. Yeah, definitely. I guess when you take a look at the breakdown of the route, and particularly the breakdown of the climb, you take a look and you've got 2 climbs there of 2.5 kilometers, particularly the Temple KOM, 2.5 kilometers, averaging 3.6%, but it's a long one, isn't it? I mean, it's the highest point on the course as well. You're over 200 meters. And then, of course, you've got that fast downhill. We take a look at our series leader currently. There's Ollie Jones warming up in the pens, getting themselves set and ready, Nathan. Yeah, the riders are going to be getting warmed up, making sure they are good and ready to go right off the bat. They are going to be taking on the initial look at the Shisa section that they'll come back for the sprint. That, there isn't a whole lot of action up front, though. You could, though, see some riders who want to try and perhaps get a breakaway because of the overall standings. Let's talk to that a little bit. Hannah, I think sometimes when you're defending the overall standings, you're not that interested in chasing riders if they're not close to you in the overall standings. So there may be some riders trying to take advantage of that for a single race day win. I think so, and I think riders should do, and I think teams should be aware of that and really try and capitalize, because there will be riders who are looking at each other, particularly those riders in the top 10. And if you're a little bit further down and you're wanting to try and make up some points, make up some places, yeah, why not try and take the gamble, take the risk? 100%. Well, here we go. Riders out on course as we hit the initial parts of the Umezi section of Makuri Islands. Right-hand turn and right on over toward the first time up the Shisa Sprint climb right from the get-go. It does look like we've got a rider right at the front end of the race. We'll have to wait and see who that is trying to make things difficult initially. That is going to be Hayden Pucker, U.S. National Champion. That's Jonathan Orr, actually, at the front that you can see there. There's Stefan Van Alst as well. Neil Freyet, be on the watch out for him. I think today, because of the way that this is a punchy course, we did talk a little bit about you could make it difficult from bottom to top, but that is a tough ask for somebody. Neil Freyet, this guy, he can sprint out of any kind of climb we learned through the Zwift games. And with the form he has, it's hard to go past him for a single day win, isn't it, Hannah? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're quite right. When you take a look at the profile, Nathan, of this course, and you see how severe it is in places, and particularly you've got 6 standout climbs, really. When you take a look, there's only a couple of kilometers before we're into the first part of the elevation. Okay, the climb is only a little over 50 meters above sea level. Then you start to descend, you're onto sea level again, and then you start to kick up again, and that takes you then, of course, into the alley sprint preem in 14.9 kilometers into the race. But then it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think there's plenty of riders here who will want to try and take advantage, but also those who, if they are a little bit down in the standings, why not try and go for it? Try and pick and pinpoint a place to try and do something. As you can see, the Norwegian rider of Movistar, this is Gail Nes, who's got a 7-second advantage currently over the chasing bunch behind, led by Lionel Villarsin.
Well, this is interesting. Exactly what we had talked about. How Harvard Yeldins, I mean, as far as the top racer, I don't think he's really that high up in the overall standings. So this may be a situation we had talked about, giving him a little bit of, wiggle room here. Ben Muir on the front for a moment. This is a rider who can kind of he's got a big engine on him, a lot of watts, 434 watts. You can see at 5.4 watts per kilogram. So he's a pure ruler. When it goes uphill on the Tempo KOM, he doesn't really stand a chance up against some of these top climbers. But if he can really extend out 30 seconds, a minute even, throughout the entirety of this course, that could put him in the running for later on. And with the reality of his overall standings, they may just give him a leash to work with because the other riders are only thinking about the overall points and maybe willing to sacrifice. Or maybe they're just thinking, that's not going anywhere. We'll bring him on and come to climb. We're about to find out because they're hitting the first time uphill onto the Shisa sprint.
That's sometimes a danger, isn't it, Nathan, when they think, well, someone's attacked so early, don't need to worry about this. And in actual fact, they become a real threat because they gain such an advantage. They gain such a time advantage over the chasing bunch behind. And if it does get to a minute or even over a minute, you never know what might happen, especially if there's not really a cooperative chase behind. But for Gail Nes of Movistar in this blue jerseys, you can see the gap starting to come down. Kjell Powers on the front, 10 seconds now. It's started to drop, 5-6 seconds currently. But it's not an easy section, and it's also not an easy course at all. You start to see there's a little bit more action, a little bit more impetus at the head of the bunch here.
Hayden Pucker taking over at the front now, 5.0 watts per kilogram. Christoph Thiem, though, up and up to 6.4. Now, one thing that's going to be going through Harvard's mind is, am I matching the riders behind me? And is this going to pay off with how I'm matching them? 5.8 up into 484 watts. Man, with the reality of his watts per kilogram versus the main pack now pushing up into 366, 5.0, bringing it down to 8 seconds. Once this gets within 5 seconds, Harvard's going to have a serious ask as to whether or not this is really worth the amount of effort that he's throwing down. Because you can look at the back end of this pack, around that 12th and 10th place. They're putting out what seems to be about 5, maybe even 4 watts per kilogram at times. There's a lot of draft to be used. Now there's Ruben Dant making his way to the front. Great to see Ruben showing up on the day. One of those new upstarts. We saw him with a massive showing in Zwift games. Hayden Pucker up and over the top, 7.5. Now we've really got a little bit of push. And Hayden Pucker, he's the kind of rider who wants to see a breakaway situation form up front and really use, actually, him and Harvard Yeldins both being absolute rulers, absolute just monster watt type riders. We could see those two get together and have a lot of speed on the flats leading into the climbs, Hannah.
Absolutely. And I think when you get two riders like that, Nathan, who are incredibly strong together, they're great together. They really fit the similar kind of riding styles, and when you get them together, and if they do manage to gain an advantage, they'll be fully committed, and so it does become a danger. And you can start to see now that just behind, Ollie Jones is just trying to close the gap to the wheel in front of him. Arne Jacobs is there, Mikhail Kaminski, Ricardo Pinizza, who of course is sitting 5th overall in the standings.
Real quick, we want to highlight to everybody that there is a Zwift World Series dashboard. The team over at Zwift have developed a handy website for fans that has all the information you need to know about the race. Also, links to live data dashboard for fans, which will help you follow all the action in even more detail. The website can be found at zwiftworldseries.com. Zwift.com, and the link is also pinned in the YouTube chat. Today, in the rider dashboard, you'll be able to see groups on the road in the left-hand column. A group will start when there is a gap of 3 or more seconds. For each group, you can see the number of riders in that group and the average speed and watts per kilogram of all the riders in the group. You'll also be able to see the time gaps and distance on the road between each group. In the middle column and right columns, you'll be able to follow your favorite riders and all their stats. You can use the arrows at the bottom to toggle through all of the riders in the field. This will allow you to follow your favorite rider in detail throughout the race. And just a reminder, the data dashboard works best on Chrome. So as these riders start to get these splits going, that data dashboard, I'm using it right now. It's absolutely great to see where everybody sits within the pack, as well as what is happening with the breaks that are going and those who are falling off, Hannah.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? And you can see all of the live data, the watts per kilogram, the watts that they're currently putting out, and as you say, a real detailed look through of the time gaps. But of course, we've got the top 12, which is on the right-hand side of the screen there, Nathan. But of course, on the dashboard, you can see each and every rider. So it's certainly, you can see exactly what's going on if someone might have had a problem, for example. And I think it's really useful for team managers to see the situation on the virtual road.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely, if I were a DS, I would be using the dashboard every moment. It helps a ton, not only for, the DSs. I think just keeping all the info that you need to know what's happening in the race, it's one of the best inventions, actually, for the scene of esports at this elite level. Now, Ben Muir at the front here, 3.6 watts per kilogram. As you see those numbers go down below those threshold or VO2 type numbers, which is usually for these elite riders, somewhere between that 5 to 6, even up into 7 watts per kilogram for the VO2. You know that they're not really working too hard. It's tempo or even zone 2 as we get down into those 3.5 to about 4.5 watts per kilogram as you look at the right-hand side. So a good idea of how the riders are feeling and what they're experiencing is how you can measure that with those numbers on the right there. Ruben Don getting into a super tuck, though, on the downhill. Hits the front for just a moment. That's not a breakaway or anything. He literally hit the front for a moment there in a super tuck, just to make sure that he's resting up as much as he possibly can. One of the rare situations when you hit the front and you know it's actually going to be to your advantage. Well, Gel Power now did a little bit of a kick from him, 7.2. This is pretty serious. I saw 9 watts per kilogram for a moment there coming from Gel Power, and I see 3 riders now starting to form off the front. Neil Freyette with the Golden Tron being one of them. Harvey Geldings now as well. That was the rider early on, obviously very motivated to try and get something going. And through this section, of course, this is a great section to actually try and get a breakaway going. There's a little bit of winding. It's hard to get the draft actually up in this little section that's coming up that's kind of winding before they hit the caves uphill. And if you have a little bit of a gap and then you hit that uphill grind hard with 3 riders, it's a draftable climb. It is somewhere where you can do more or at least match the pack. I kind of like this move coming from Gel Power, Harvard Geldings, and Neil Freyette, a danger man to be involved here.
Can just see how it's starting to fragment towards the back end of the bunch as well. Ed Laverack sitting comfortably. The man from West Wales, you can see, looks pretty good. You can see picture in picture. He's the Welsh rider. Currently sitting 143 beats per minute, 255 watts, putting out what? 4.1 watts per kilogram currently. But they're not hanging around here, Nathan. When you take a look at the speeds, it's really hard to translate and to really show how difficult and how fast a race can be. You take a look at the data at 48, 49, 50 kilometers per hour that they're currently doing, and they're losing a little bit of time on power. Freyette, Puka.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a gap actually starting to form. This is interesting. Those who are sitting up, I wonder where the heart rates are at. I think a lot of these riders are just sitting in thinking that that's not going to go anywhere. But when you have Ruben Dant, Neil Freyette, both top riders, obviously, in the Zwift games, hitting podiums there, Hayden Pucker also involved, who just can essentially pull this group all day long at 400 watt FTP. These are guys you don't want to give too much of a leash with, and I think this is a pretty motivated crowd. We'll see if they come up over the top. Now, if they're caught right here at the bottom of the start of the climb, they're going to take the right-hand turn, a little bit of a weave S-turn for a second, and you can see the entrance to the caves right here, and then it'll start heading uphill. Even though they're caught right here at the bottom, I have a feeling we could see an attack up and over the top of this. Every moment that you do get any kind of uphill, it is an opportunity to try and make something happen. And there's no real reward up until that alley sprint. And the alley sprint, it's fast. It's first across the line, not fastest through segment. So because of that, you could get a breakaway for a cool few $100s. So maybe some of these riders just motivated to try and grab that cash.
This can be the danger, though, Nathan, if you put yourself out at the front and you're, of course, exerting a lot more energy and you're having to push a lot more wind in comparison to sitting in the wheels and sitting in the draft. If it does come back together, or indeed if you're caught on a climb and you've almost started to overreach yourself, you can't recover quick enough. And so if you lose the wheel and if there are more attacks that start to fly off, you're going to start to lose the bunch then. And so it's really, you have to be very mindful. You have to be very clever where you make your attacks. And crucially, once we get to flatter sections or even on the descents after some of these climbs, really take the opportunity to recover. Because some of the climbs, and I particularly think once we start to get towards the back end of the race with the Temple KOM Preem, which of course it goes up in two stages when you take a look at the profile, you've got to make sure that you've got something in the tank and left in the legs.
Taking a look at Martin Mertens here, about to retire, giving us one last go for ZWS, it looks like, and it's great to see him. I wonder if he's putting any kind of work in between Zwift Games and this, or, that is a big question, right? Zwift Games being very close to these final two ZWS races, and whether or not riders were able to do any kind of serious training. I know a lot of riders were peaking specifically for Zwift Games and just trying to ride that peak. We might also see some breakthrough performances. Sometimes when you try and plan that peak, Hannah, I think riders can get into a situation where it didn't perfectly go well, and then suddenly they find that high peak performance a week or two after when they had planned it. Sometimes they surprise themselves. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if we see a couple of breakthrough performances today, specifically because of the timing, and sometimes you get overexcited and overtrain into your peak event and then backed off a little bit. I have a feeling we're going to see some of that today.
Perhaps. Do you think riders will have had a break? Maybe not between now and the Zwift Games, but of course if you're trying to hold that form for a long time over the last few months, making sure that you've taken the right amount of rest and recovery, and just to let the body recover from all of what it's been doing, all of the training before going into another big goal.
Oh, 100%. I think the main thing a lot of these riders will just be doing, especially if Zwift Games was the focus, is maybe just a little bit of base maintenance, so just one long ride. And then outside of that, every 48 to 72 hours, a full gas interval session that's very specific to whatever you'll be experiencing in the race. And besides that, it's rest and recover. Shorter rides, making sure the blood's just moving through the system and getting the nutrition in. And I think that's a lot of these riders will be doing at this time. I think for a lot of these riders, March and April with this schedule were the peak time, and essentially you can peak for about 4 to 8 weeks maximum, in my opinion, before you have to go back into some serious hours for training. So I think a lot of these riders will just be riding out that fitness they built out for Zwift Games. Speaking of fitness, Jonathan Orr at the front, really smashing just a moment ago, but now backs on off as Vyazin takes over at 4.5. Or obviously very motivated, but it looks like unable to really make anything serious happen. Now he goes again. So it looks like Jonathan Orr is one of these riders that is trying to make something happen. Neil Freyet, though, is matching every single move. I am so surprised by Neil by this, because I thought he'd be a rider who would just be sitting in, but he is making alarm bells go off, because when a rider like that continues to go up the front, he is motivated to make a break happen.
Certainly is, and you can see the danger. Look how this has stretched things out now, and the riders who are at the back, a few bike lanes starting to open up currently, but Jonathan Orr, we've already seen him quite active already at the start of this race. And Neil Freyet has made the junction, Panizza is there, the Italian rider, also the Polish rider Michał Kaminski. Moving on to the Belgian along with Kjell Power. Monteru has made it across for Hexagon in that orange jersey. Oh, just not quite able to close the gap currently. Slowly but surely.
Hayden Pucker on the front, though, pulls it back. There come the Stars and Stripes back into the fold here. Michael Kaminski. You know, Michael Kaminski, seeing him and Neil Frat on the front, that is such a dangerous thing. I love this over and over again. He goes, they close it down. He goes again, they close it down. He goes again, and he is fully committed to countering every single time that he is caught. He is obviously completely committed to grabbing this first preem. They've let him go at this time, and I think it's because they all realize what he's after, and that might not be the motivation. Plus, it's close enough to that sprint that it's going to come down to just a hair's length, really, as to whether or not he's going to be able to hold it, because they're about to ramp up like crazy for those other few spots in this sprint preem.
He's like a diesel engine, isn't he? A diesel rider, Jonathan Orr. 6 watts per kilogram, 426 watts currently. He's opened up a gap, Nathan. This is pretty substantial, particularly going into this preem. 4 seconds and growing. 50 kilometers per hour. Vidal Mel is now the rider who's in the chase. We've got 2.4 kilometers to go until we get to that preem itself, but he's looking strong. He's looking really solid, isn't he, Jonathan Orr?
180? Does that look like somebody doing 188 beats per minute? He looks fairly calm, actually. Like, I love what I'm seeing from this guy. Now, here's the thing. He's got a little bit of a climb, and I think the group knows that there is a climb through this little sprint section in a second. Now, this little sprint section, though, it doesn't have anything on the line. They're just going to go on through the banner here, and then it is kind of a winding uphill where there will be the opportunity to use some of that uphill to gain time quickly. And Michał Kaminski, 7.8 watts per kilogram, you see the motivation right there.
You talk about, does it look like he's at 188 beats per minute? Not at all. That's some good form there, isn't it, from Jonathan Orr? If you're able to make it look so simple when you're already, up towards the 200 beats per minute, it's pretty special. Go through the cherry blossom, across the paving stones. 2.8 seconds now. Kaminski leading the chase, Nathan.
Yeah, not really too much of a split just yet, but here we go. Here's Johan Noren. Noren up and over the top, knowing that this is a fast section through here. Now it levels out, -% gradient. It's a great time to attack after speed up and over the top. He's getting an immediate 1 to 2 seconds here as Johan Noren, Neil Freyat right on the wheel, looking for cash today. It looks like as Freyat wants to sprint. I don't think he's going to do any work. Just grabs Noren's wheel. Adrian Alvarado at the front, but he slows it right down. Only 4.4 from Alvarado as Jasper Paradines. Now Paradines, he is a rider to watch out for when it comes to a sprint. He's had one of the best kicks of the entirety of the elite fields in virtual cycling for this last, I would say, year or so. Be on the watch out for him, but he's going to get caught out, it looks like, because Noren, he's a freight train onto this downhill into this first 700 meters or so to the sprint line. 4 seconds. Do they have enough? Neil Freyat's going to probably have to come over the top of this, but at 6 watts per kilogram, I think Noren's going to pull him right into a cool $500.
A huge effort. Freyat takes over from Noren, the Swedish rider. Behind, it's 3.5 seconds. Jakob is leading the chase, the Dutchman. Kaminski is right there, but it's looking likely that it's going to be between one of these two. 300 meters to go now. So they just bear right to left, right to left.
Here comes Michał Kaminski. Kaminski up at the 10 watts per kilogram, and Neil Freyat with a quick little sprint, and it's going to be nothing for him. He has to have to throw down 16 for a second. Easily going to come across and take that preem. Who's going to set up for second? Johan Noren? Is he going to be able to take it? Is he going to get caught at the line? No! Snapped at the line! I think Paniza just barely grabbed that from him for the second place on the preem. No! Excuse me, sorry, Noren just barely got it. I thought Paniza may be able to grab it, but it's Freyat, Johan, and Ricardo Paniza almost able to snipe it away from that breakaway. But now, there's a little bit of a gap here. Is Freyat, he looks like he's still working. We'll have to wait and see if he's sitting up or not. Freya doing about 4.7, I think, watts per kilogram at this point. Mikhail Kaminsky now looking to come across. There is a gap of about, I'd say 5 seconds to the group. You got Paniza. He's an absolute workhorse. Kaminsky's there as well. 3 riders who are some of the strongest riders in the world of esports at this moment are off the front, and Noren's going, wait, I'm not going to let this go. Are they going to sit up? Are they going to work together? Big question marks right now.
You're almost in no man's land. You've gone through such a hard, difficult section there, Nathan, where you might not have had the legs to try and go with that. And Noren currently, well, he's going to get swept up by the group behind, isn't he, currently? But you can see that Panitzer is working well with Freyet and Kaminsky. Just see the trios, they start to move through. Kaminsky almost making it look easy. You can see him in the bottom left, 168 beats per minute, of stark contrast to what we saw before with our man who was off the front, Jonathan Orr, at 188 beats per minute. But you're right, this could be a real threat here if they start to work together.
Yeah, and they've almost made the catch here. It is about 4 seconds. A couple of the riders looking to go across. Planthro, that's a perfect setup for him. Xiao Power as well, looking to go across. Mikhail Planthro, this is the kind of move that he loves. He loves just a high threshold effort, a race of attrition. He doesn't want it to come down to a sprint, and now he's looking to get involved. With Paniza and Kaminsky up there, those guys can do 5 to 6 watts per kilogram. On the rotation, they can even push higher than that, and they are looking to rotate. They are doing 46 kilometers per hour, whereas the chase group, they're only doing what it looks to be about 44, 43, so they're doing a little bit more, I think, than the main pack, but the main pack is getting motivated. Ruben Dant now, Richard Berry, they can see the threat. They both kick up into 8 watts per kilogram, and that's going to bring the pack all well, maybe not. There is a little bit of a split, actually, between Ruben Dant as well as Richard Berry and the main pack. Is it all going to come back together? And as soon as they see that, they may kill the motivations here, because this many riders off the front, that's going to be too much danger. And I think this is all going to come back together in just a moment. Well, it looks like Kaminsky now, 7.4, looking to grab onto his teammate's wheel. You can see Kaminsky with the Golden Tron. A lot of Golden Trons actually up here, at least 2 of them. You can see Neil Fret as well as Kaminsky. Ricardo Paniza grabbing onto Kaminsky's wheel. And they're actually about to start a climb. And because of how hard they went after that initial sprint for those preems, that is definitely going to make this a much more difficult rooftop. So they're going to hit this little section through the railway, and they're going to make their way on over to that rooftop. And if they continue rotating on the front here, it's going to keep heart rates high. A lot of times the rooftop is a very draftable climb, and you kind of come to it thinking, no big deal. But if they make this essentially a threshold into VO2 over and over and over again for a long period of time, that could put a couple of people out the back. And this isn't exactly what I was expecting. There's actually a big gap here. I didn't notice that. Look at that, 4 seconds with 9 riders. I'm Richard Berry, Lano Vyasen, Neil Fret, Mikhail Planthro, Ruben Dant, Jeffrey Miror, Ricardo Matiza, Mikhail Kaminsky, Zhao Power. This is exactly the kind of group I would want to see to be amongst. I mean, this is some of the biggest hitters in the race, all off the front. They keep working together. This might be game over for everybody else behind here, Hannah.
And I guess it's what has anybody else got left after such a fast, hard race thus far. You've done 25 minutes of racing, or coming up to 25 minutes of racing, where it's been full gas. There hasn't really been a lull in the race so to speak of, and there's been plenty of attacks off the front. And so when you've got 9 riders who are off the front, Richard Barry just getting himself back on there, it can become dangerous. But I guess it comes down to who's got the legs behind Nathan, but also who's maybe got teammates up front. And when you take a look at individual standings, how much does that make a difference into things, the way that this race is unfolding?
Yeah, and I think looking at the riders in the field right now, I mean, Ollie Jones, he's your current leader. He's out the back at this moment, but he's got teammates. Now, here's the thing. Ollie Jones is the kind of rider who could be sitting and make up that 10 seconds on the climb. he could do it, right? There might be a couple of riders that are thinking, look, I'm not going to just pull every rider across at this moment, but what I am going to do is I'm going to give everything I can to get across to that group on the climb and try and close. Now, if it goes out to 15, though, that's a massive gap to close down on the rooftop. So I have a feeling we're about to see incredible fireworks from that chase group. A couple of riders are going to look to go across and not pull anybody with them. Otherwise, I think it's game over for everybody in this chase group. You know, I mean, Hayden Pucker, Adrian LeGriffin, we're talking Nikki Hug. These are the big names. There's quite a few that still, I think, have the kind of power, but outside of them, I mean, there's the rest. I'm not sure that they got the effort any longer to really make it across. So watch this next, I think, 5 minutes or so. It's going to define the rest of the race.
If Ollie Jones can make the junction, and if he does try and use one of those climbs, Nathan, to try and bridge across, and as you say, you think he's quite capable of closing, you know, sort of 10, 11 seconds on a climb. The fact that he's got a teammate up the road in Michał Kaminski, the Polish rider, who we can just see his name highlighted there towards the front of this breakaway group. How much do you think his presence will help Ollie Jones if he's able to bridge across and almost work as two teammates?
Oh, 100%. I think the reality of the team situation is actually why Ollie Jones is so calm right now. I think that having the team off the front at this moment is saying, look, I don't got to do any work, and if I am going to make a bridge, I'm only going to do it when nobody is going to be able to hold on to my wheel or they have to work just as hard as I do. So I think at this moment, all the chips are being put in the basket of Michał Kaminski in order to try and get the win for that coalition team. Ollie Jones, he can sit, he can just allow everybody else to do the work and wait for a moment to jump across when he senses weakness amongst the group. That's exactly what's going on here with this coalition team. There's also the reality of Lionel Viasen, another rider who's sitting in with that main pack up there, also has made it into this lead group. So I think Ollie Jones can see he's got two teammates up there. If he gets pulled up across at that moment, as you can see, it is going to be brought back together. I'm actually a little surprised they're not working any harder than that. It tells you just how difficult the race has been up until this point.
Yeah, big surprise, and you could see the action there from helicopter shot at what was going on and how much impetus there was at the front of that chasing group there. And they've been able to close that 11-second gap pretty swiftly, really. I mean, you don't get the full scene as to how that's happened, but that was pretty quick, the way that they were able to close things back and come back together. It's all status quo now, led by Lionel Viasen. Ollie Jones right there, and I think that's also something that top riders are able to do, Nathan. The fact that they don't panic under the pressure. They keep themselves calm, they stick to the plan, they stick to the process, they trust their teammates. And I think that's what makes a really good rider or a really good athlete, the fact that they're able to trust their teammates and almost trust the process as to what is going to happen. And I think they're also sure of themselves. And so for Ollie Jones, there was no need to panic. He knew he had a teammate up the road.
This is interesting. Lionel Viasen with a launch over the top. He's not really working for this, though. It's just 3.3 watts per kilogram. They did collect an aero power-up, I believe, at the top of this rooftops, if I'm not incorrect.
They did. They did. Want to know?
Yeah, nice little collection there. You know, that's a talking point. Where are they thinking of using that? There's a lot of opportunity for that aero power-up, isn't there, Hannah?
Yeah, there is, and I think the most important thing is, Nathan, that you only get one, and so you've got to be careful and cautious as to where you want to use that power-up. And, you know, I said it before that you have to use this course to your advantage. You know, you've got to try and get the recovery on the descents, on the flats, and interestingly, it's Viasen who's off the front, who perhaps isn't trying to maintain or make use of the potential recovery on the descents here. But I mean, yeah, I guess for me, it depends if you're wanting to go for a finish, if you want to try and use your aero power-up. And are you going to try and go for a victory? Do you want to try and use it in the final sprint? I mean, where would you use it?
Yeah, it's a good question. For this course, Hannah, there's a lot of feeling out whatever. It's such a long course, right? You're looking at over 50 kilometers of racing, a good amount of climbing. And because of that, and also there's the reality of how many different sections that have these punchier, very tactical sections, of course, where you can find a lot of speed differentiations between yourself and riders who might be hurting. And so main places that I'd be looking at are actually coming up still. Everyone's still going to have a lot of energy in the legs at this point. They're still going to be mostly able to follow and respond. I mean, there is the reality of how hard they've been making the racing, though. I mean, Neil Freyet just continues to just hammer off the front and cover moves. This is the first one I've seen for him solo, though, actually. And so, with how hard they've made this racing, I think a lot of riders are going to be thinking in the back of their head, people are going to be hurting today a little bit more. So because of that, you could see maybe an advantage looked for over the top of the Castle KOM. It is a little bit downhill before you hit the tempo climb into the dirt. Perhaps a rider wants to get a little bit of space between them and the pack through there. That's a pretty low, I think, percentage dice roll, but it's a pretty big maybe. The other place I would say is over the top of the sharpest section of the tempo KOM on the dirt. There's one last little punch that gets up into 10%, even a little bit more than that gradient toward the end of the tempo KOM that immediately goes into a very sharp downhill and then into the KOM. I think there, because of the money that's on the line, as well as the double bonus of being able to get some distance between you and everyone else and perhaps create a breakaway into the downhill dirt, I think that section will see a couple of aero power-ups. And outside of that, I think everyone's going to save it either for the corkscrew or the finish line. So those are your main 4 spots that perhaps we'll see the aero used, in my opinion.
We've seen Neil Freyet, who's been really active, Nathan, and always up towards the front on this kind of course where it's long, it's really arduous, it's very, very attritional. Is it not a case of you're almost burning your matches too much and come the real key points of this course, you're not going to have what it takes? Or do you think he's quite capable of each and every demand that this course has?
It's a good question, actually, because there may be a couple of riders who have just been sitting in and waiting for their moment, that they have made key moments out on course, and regardless of how strong some of these other riders are, they're just defending their position and waiting for that moment to pounce. I think that that's a great point, because we've got riders still like Le Griffin. I mean, that's a rider who's up and coming. He's new to the elite scene, but we've seen him at the front many times making serious moves. You see Jaldine's not making a move again, of course. He loves these flat sections. He's looking for that distance to try and make sure he has a little bit of wiggle room when it does get into the climbs. Another one, Stefan Van Elst, Jasper Paradines, Joe Perreault, all these riders, they're in the top 10. I have a feeling that some of them are just waiting for that marked place on course, which is most likely that tempo KOM. Arnie Jacobs, another rider who's got a lot of firepower. I think there's some of these other riders, though, that have a lot of confidence. Looking at Neil Freyet, looking at Lionel Viasen, Mikel Plantero, he's been pretty quiet, only making his way into one move. Another rider who perhaps may be saving for something a little later on. So there are some here, I think, Hannah, that I think probably are a half a watt per kilogram to a full watt per kilogram of energy output less on average that are marking that tempo KOM for later.
And there's no surprise, really. It's a long one. It's 2.5 kilometers, and you've also got a 2.5 kilometer climb just before you get to the temple KOM, because of course you've got the castle climb just before it, which is also 2.5 kilometers, although a little less steep in its average gradient. It's only 2.1% average, whereas the temple KOM is 3.6% of an average gradient. But when you combine those two together, 5 kilometers of climbing with very little respite, it can certainly do some damage, and particularly for those who have already been so active already in the first part of this race. So we see Mir move towards the front in this pinkish purple jersey. Ollie Jones is up towards the front, as is Orr. But when hasn't he?
One thing that I'm noticing here on the overall for the team classifications, I mean, Next Esports, presented by Insured, they are the leading team, and I've seen them so far extremely quiet, actually. Now, who they all have representing, though, on the day is going to be the big question. We've got Zach Neer, we've got James Barnes, Nicky Hug, and Richard Berry. All 4 of those riders still involved in the main pack. And those are riders we have not seen touch the front. Looking at the team classification overall, as well as just the reality that a rider like Zach Neer, James Barnes, Nicky Hug, all of them could, figure out a way to find themselves off the front after corkscrew and maybe waiting for later on. So tactically, the current leading team actually has been the quietest of them all, as we see Ben Muir off the front for Wahoo Esports.
Sometimes it's not a bad thing when you don't see riders or teams. Sometimes it can be... It almost takes a skill to be patient and not use all of your matches and burn all of your matches too soon and really stick to the plan that you've come in with. And maybe they're waiting. Maybe it's that playing that waiting game. They're wanting to try something on the climb, or they're wanting to make sure they've got the strength in numbers and almost allow everybody to fire their shots off the front, go off the front. They burn their matches. In turn, they get brought back because others really want to make sure that they're in the race. And so perhaps for our leaders in the team classification, maybe they're just playing that waiting game, being patient, being smart. And this is, again, where a sports director comes into their own, Nathan, particularly in making a strategy, also guiding them as to what's happening, what's going on, how's everyone looking. As we see 10 kilometers into our next preem. And once again, it's the man from the USA, Jonathan Orr, who's off the front. He makes this look a little bit easy, doesn't he?
He does. I like the motivation from the RWB, right? It's really cool to see, actually, as he continues to make these moves off the front, getting that TV time. I'm seeing a huge upset on the day, actually. The current reigning U.S. national champion, Hayden Pucker, off the back, it looks like maybe some sort of mechanical issue at this point. So that puts out one of the top riders in the field now at this point. That also calms down the chases. After the Temple KOM, the reality of having Hayden Pucker either in a chase group if he doesn't make the main climb, that's a massive boost to anyone actually that's in that group, because the amount of power and just downhill speed that rider can produce. So that's going to change up the reality of the race later on as Pucker no longer involved. Now we are down to what looks to be 29 riders actually in this front group, all waiting for the Castle KOM that's about to take on. 5 seconds is the gap now for Jonathan Orr. I have a feeling that's going to get shut down pretty quickly as we hit that Castle KOM. But if they do look at each other, maybe Jonathan Orr can get a little bit of distance before we hit the Temple KOM. It may be draftable enough that the Castle climb might not see any kind of serious attacks, but I doubt it with the way that these riders have been riding so far. It's been nothing but mayhem every single time we head uphill.
It certainly has. And just to run through a couple of other riders who have been distanced so far. Christoph Thiem, the German rider, he's 1 minute 45 off the back, along with Olivier Simmons, the Belgian. You've also got Luke Alton, who's at 3:47. You mentioned Hayden Pucker. He's continuing to lose time, 11 minutes and 48 seconds in arrears now. And Brad Gavarius, likewise, is over 13 minutes in arrears. Surely something must have gone wrong for Pucker.
Yeah, I have a feeling maybe a dropout or some sort of mechanical, or maybe perhaps internet. Who knows? It's really heartbreaking to see actually someone who's so motivated and so committed to esports cycling. So hopefully we'll see Pucker in the next race just in a couple weeks' time. But as we head on, everybody else is probably a little bit thankful with the reality of not having Farm Watts in there, because the guy can definitely throw down day in and day out. As we head over, it is all the way out to 10 seconds actually. This is getting interesting, to be honest. There is a reality that if this goes out to 30, Jonathan Orr might be able to hold on to a gap, and they will most likely calm down after the Castle KOM before they hit the Temple. So about to see what he can throw down through the S turns up to the Castle in just a moment here.
Coming up to one of our largest gaps of a breakaway this evening, I have to say. When you take a look at that previous pretty dangerous breakaway that we had, they gained, 11 seconds, 12 seconds. Jonathan Orr is now continuing to pull out the gap, 13 seconds, and continuing to grow. 23 kilometers remaining, over 40 minutes of racing is complete. You take a look at how consistent he is, though, when you take a look at his numbers and his output.
Ben Meir continues to hit the front from Wahoo Esports. It's interesting that Ben Meir is so motivated to do rotations at the front. Obviously, he has been given some sort of marching orders out here to keep Jonathan Orr within striking distance. I wonder if that has something to do with the overall in the individual classifications, or perhaps in the overall for the team classifications. I'm looking at Wahoo at this moment. They're in 8th place currently. RWB a little bit further down, I believe. So I'm not sure that that's too much of a threat. Perhaps it's something to do with the individual classifications. But again, I'm not seeing anything right there either. So maybe Mir just trying to make things difficult for everybody else at this point, or set up Adrian Alvarado or somebody else from Wahoo for a solid kick up and over the top. Ben Mir currently sitting in 22nd place overall in the series standings. We hit that wind about switchbacks in a moment here, as this is the start of the Castle KOM section, as Jonathan Orr still leads by 17 seconds, but they're going to start seeing him on these switchbacks in just a moment.
Do you think the fact that they're keeping the pressure applied, and particularly speaking about Wahoo Esports here, Nathan, is perhaps they don't want to, they almost want to try and put some fatigue into the rivals, keep the pressure applied, and almost try and stop any big attacks, big ferocious attacks, and they'd rather it be almost a whittling down process and to start to split this group, as opposed to a huge injection of pace.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, this is an interesting section here with, I just get the sense that they're not worried about Jonathan at this point, Hannah, and that I have a feeling that he's going to have a solid amount of time on his hand. I mean, he did this over and over and over again, looking for exactly this outcome, right? And I thought perhaps we would see what you were saying, a huge injection of pace in just a moment. You might see it right here around this corner, but they're waiting for the Tempo KOM, it seems like to me. And Jonathan Orr able to match them. Ben Meir is actually making it just hard enough, I feel like, that nobody's really coming up over the top. It's almost helping Jonathan in some ways, it seems like, as you're saying here. So, I mean, Orr could get enough time that he comes over the top of the Tempo KOM around the front of this race if he continues on like this.
How much time do you think he needs? Once, if he gets to the top of the Temple KOM and he's got the advantage still, he's right within his rhythm. You can see he's been very, very consistent, holding around that 400 watt marker. What time does he need over the chasing group behind?
Like a minute. I think he needs like a minute. I mean, really, I think it's a lot. I mean, the reality... well, we don't have Leonard Tugels here. There's a few riders who are not here who would drive the pace even higher, right? We saw them going 8, 9 watts per kilogram at the serious times for long periods of time up on the top of that Tempo KOM. So, you know, depending on how they go through this next section, I do feel like it's got to be 40 seconds to a minute, though, with how hard they're going to climb up over the top. But they are being very cagey, aren't they? You know, there
very
was
cagey.
A lot thrown down, and perhaps that continues on. Maybe they're not that worried about Jonathan. I might have to eat my words in a little bit here, but I do feel like it's got to be 40 seconds plus for him to be able to hold on to the top. And even there, it's going to be very difficult. So they're going to climb like maniacs, knowing that that's the main pinch point over the top of that Tempo KOM. And with the money at the top, I think there's going to be a lot of motivation.
And everyone wants to try and have a slice of that and be in with the prize money. And rightly so. 20 seconds, the gap holding steady. A couple of riders starting to lose the wheel at the back of this group. That's Ben Meir, who was setting things up earlier on. He was setting the pace before. You've also got Yunsei Honda, who's at the back of the group. The Japanese rider, Nikki Hug, is there still. Also starting to lose the wheel, Ruben de Hunt.
I find it really interesting that riders are kind of working together to keep that gap down a little bit. Vidar Mail on the front at 5.1 watts per kilogram. putting a little bit of a dig in. I mean, it's not really a dig. It's just steady, high tempo to threshold for these guys. Mikhail Planthero up and over the top, 6.9. That's a pretty serious dig to try and up the speed. I don't think he really expects to go anywhere with that. I think he's just looking to kind of make sure that Jonathan doesn't get too much of a gut. Well, maybe Lionel Biasino coming across downhills, the new uphills, as Ollie Jones also looks to go across, making sure that doesn't get anywhere. I have seen downhill sections like this quickly get out of control as Planthero. This is, wow, 8 watts per kilogram. He's starting to get a gap. I was not expecting this downhill to be the attack section.
Especially when you take a look at this course and how hard some of the climbs are, that you want to try and use the downhill sections as a place to try and get some recovery, some respite. But they're saying, well, look, if we can try and take some rivals and some riders by surprise, why not use the downhill? A couple of riders now coming across, including Neil Freyet. He's just gone straight to the front of this group. More and more start to join. But when you take a look at these climbs, Nathan, they're almost VO2 max kind of climbs. 3 to 6 minutes of an effort. When you take a look, it's short, it's high intensity. It's really difficult climbs, depending on how they've been raced and ridden.
Some of the most pain I've ever felt on Zwift is on the tempo KOM. Honestly, this is one of the most difficult climbs because you can see the wheel. It's mentally painful even too because the wheels are right there, and the reality of being on the dirt makes it so that the draft is not experienced quite as much. You're going uphill. The speeds are still kind of high for uphill at the powers that you're throwing down. And so with that mental anguish of why isn't this wheel giving me anything while you're also throwing down the hardest effort you've ever hit, man, I think I've been dropped on this climb so many times amongst the elite crews where it's just mind-boggling the amount of effort that they can throw down. And in just a moment, we're about to see what looks to be, not dirt, cement type speeds, right? Like flats on the pavement type speeds, uphill on dirt, though, with the way that they are going to attack this. It's going to feel crazy fast as they take this right-hand turn onto the dirt. And here we go. We've got Mir, we've got Ollie Jones, we've got Vyasin all setting up toward the front now at this point. A couple of S-turns. They're going to hit the fence section. And I think this first little fence section as we head through the woods is the first place we really head uphill. And there's no serious advantage of a draft. And that's where riders are going to really start to think, okay, now's the time. As Zach Mir hits the front for one of the first times from Next, presented by Insured.
And this is exactly what we were talking about, how riders and teams have been able to keep themselves anonymous and stay in the wheels, not be too present up towards the front, make sure that you don't go with any moves, any attacks. And as you say, first time that we've seen Zach Nair, he's now up towards the front, bringing this gap down 6 seconds. We've gone from 19, 20 seconds, now 5 seconds. 5.9 seconds is the gap as they're onto the dirt. 24 kilometers per hour. Vyasin is there, the Croatian rider for Coalition.
Now look at the speed. Look at the speed of that pack. Just comes rolling up. I mean, like a freight train up to Jonathan Orr. And as we said, he was going to need a solid minute. They're about a quarter of the way up this climb now at this point. We're going to hit the bamboo forest here in just a moment. And here we go. It's going to be a little bit of an S-turn. These are the curves up in the 10%. This is one of the main sections to watch out for any kind of attacks. It'll flatten out actually in just a moment and actually head downhill just a little bit. And then we hit into the main final punch up at the top of this. But this is where you can really start to turn the screws. As Kaminsky hits 7 watts per kilogram. Vyasin following his teammate, Stefan Van Elst now. First time we've seen Van Elst really up toward the front. Gel Power, the other Belgian here, now making his way. Everyone's going to be looking for position. And it really matters actually on this slower moving dirt. Because if you are out of position, you have to push past a rider who's letting a wheel go, it can be a very dangerous moment. So everyone's going to be fighting for right around that top 5 to 10 to make sure they're in a good position, not let a wheel go or be involved for the KOM because there's some cash at the top.
And it can be really taxing when you take a look at what's happened already at the back of the race. Well, Jonathan Orr, of course, after that big effort, he's now 12 seconds in arrears. Bjorklund is at 28 seconds. Ben Mir has started to lose time. He's at 9 seconds, sitting in 27th overall at the moment. At some point, I'm sure we're going to start to see things fragment, Nathan. and by the sheer pace that's being set or from any attacks, riders are just not able to hold the wheel.
Yeah, and we're about to see that section, I think, here in just a second. Watch as these riders hit this flat. A lot of times you back off a little bit if nobody's really got a gap, and you wait for this little bit of a down and right into the up. Now, you can see that -5% gradient in just a moment again. That's going to speed some riders up who are anticipating this specific section, and I have a feeling we're about to see the serious attacks up on the top. We might even see some arrow power-ups being thrown down. There it is, Adrian Alvarado, Kaminsky, now 9 watts per kilogram, up into 7% gradient. We're about to see it get into the red numbers in just a moment here. 6%, 5%. Kaminsky now continuing on. One more little dip. Down and then up again. Now's the final moments. Ricardo Paniza now 10 watts per kilogram. Ruben Dont 9 watts per kilogram. This is the moves, but they have not gotten a gap. I am so surprised that nobody's able to really get any distance, and now it's all on the line for the money, but they're not going to be able to cause any kind of splits. Here comes an arrow power up. It's going to be, is that Alvarado? No, it's going to be Martin Mertens. Mertens, we haven't seen him involved hardly at all. He sat in the entire time, and suddenly Cryo RDT, love to see it. He's retiring from esports, and this is one of his final moves of his career in esports. Awesome to see Mertens take down that KOM.
How memorable. What a performance there from Martin Mertens. He waited, he picked his moment. I mean, it just shows his experience, doesn't it? The fact that, and it's going to be sad to see him leave esports, I've got to say, but that was pretty textbook. Adrian Alvarado taking second, Jasper Paradines taking third. There he is, Martin Mertens, who took first place and took that preem pretty convincingly.
This is a crucial moment now as to whether or not they continue on and get into those super tucks. The reality of the dirt on a downhill, it can slow you down so much while you're actually working at a really high level, while riders who are up toward the front start rotating into super tucks and don't do any work at all. Now, the reality is, I mean, I actually am a little astonished. They did not climb that from bottom to top full gas, actually. We saw a lot of 4 watt per kilogram, 3 watt per kilogram, quite a few times. It was very cagey. And because of that, we still have 25 riders coming over the top of the Temple KOM. I was not expecting this at all. I have a feeling, though, that this is going to set up for a lot of riders throwing attacks one after another to see what they can do coming into the final kilometers here. This is going to, I think, set up for a absolute mayhem, absolute hurricane of a final, actually, coming into these final 14K.
Yeah, I'm very, very surprised, I've got to say. I really thought things would start to fragment, Nathan, and we'd have several riders who were off the back, we'd have a select group who were off the front, and but it's not because we didn't see it happen, Nathan. I mean, we saw riders make accelerations and really start to up the pace, but it just didn't snap. The elastic didn't snap.
No, it didn't. It was, I mean, it goes to show also the level and that everyone is really peaking. After Zwift Games, I think everyone has a lot of form. I think everybody really knows what they need to show up with. There's very small percentages, differentiation between some of these riders here at this point. So, and there's also the team competition. This one is a little bit more focused in on team competition, obviously. And so because of that, I think there's a lot of chasing, a lot of, riders, working together to make sure that their team ends up in the right position at the right time. It's got a little bit of that, well, let's try and place as many as we can in the top 5 or in the top 10 for our team. So you end up with tactics that change up whether or not they're really letting things go or not. Mikhail Planthero, dude, this is what we were talking about. This is the kind of rider that likes to race through attrition. He likes to try and get a breakaway going. And I think we're going to see this from him. I think we might see some sort of a move from Paniza, the Griffin, all riders that try to make breaks happen. But Planthero, this is a guy who can make this happen. Kaminsky says no, 7 watts per kilogram, and looks to ramp things up and looking to maybe get a super tuck going. Because this is only 53 kilometers per hour from Planthero right now, and I have a feeling that Van Elst and Kaminsky, they're going to be doing a lot more than that.
Quite right, the junction's made now. Stefan Van Elst makes the junction. Vidal Mel's up towards the front. But I guess as well, you said they went up the Temple KOM not at full gas. They weren't completely on the limit. However, it's still been a fast race so far, Nathan. And so a good opportunity now for a little bit of respite. You can start to see a few riders moving forward, moving towards the front. You've, of course, when we get to the bottom of this descent, you have a small little plateau and then you continue to descend down. You've got that little short, sharp peak with 49 kilometers into this race, another sharp descent, and then you start to climb again up towards that finish.
Yeah, and I think the corkscrew climb is probably the main place. Now, there is a little bit of dirt section, actually, that they will hit before descending down into the Umezi section before they hit the corkscrew. That could be another section where we do see someone try and give it a go. It is a very anticipated section, though. Maybe even hitting out prior to that and then going up and over the top of an attack of that might be able to split things, because you do have a very solid downhill through there. You get a few rotating off the front in the downhill into Umezi. It could be a section where you're able to make some, little bit of time on this group, but with the level that's in this group, it's going to be difficult. The other thing, though, is a lot of these riders are just going to be tired. I mean, there's just the reality that they've put out so much effort at this point, and you've got to really spare your matches. So you're going to have people really covering moves, but at a certain point, people are going, I'm not going to do that. That's not on me any longer. And I think we're going to see riders like Planthrough, maybe Martin Meritens. Here he goes again. I think on cue, it's going to be Planthrough over and over and over again, though. And he has broken entire groups like this by doing this. This is his wheelhouse, and this may work for him eventually.
And let's not forget, why should one certain rider start to try and close everything down, particularly when you're thinking about a team classification, Nathan? You've really got to bear that in mind, that you want to try and finish high up in the standings, try and get the best placing you possibly can, particularly when you're thinking about a team classification. So everybody, almost the mindset has started to shift. And for everybody now, it's a case of, we've shelled a couple of riders who are around the back. We've seen some tactics start to unfold. There's now Anaye Jacobs of Movistar now goes off the front. He catches Plantaru. Jasper Paradines is leading the charge from behind in third currently. As Plantaru is swept up.
That's Movistar versus Hexagon, actually, and they're fourth and fifth in the team standings. There's a 20-point spread between them, and maybe Movistar just covering Hexagon to make sure that they don't catch them, actually, in the overall. They don't want to see Hexagon get a win and get some big team points, actually, out there. So perhaps Movistar covering moves. Arnie Jacobs, though, for Movistar E-Team off the front. It's a good move. Look, and Hexagon covers. Planthrow now not only wants to get involved in a breakaway situation, he's trying to cover the moves by Movistar to maybe find themselves in a better team position at the end of the day. Now, just a reminder, it is Next Esports, presented by Shore, that are currently leading the team competition. Abus Synergy are in that second place. Coalition in third, Movistar E-Team, and then Hexagon in fifth. So that's the current top five overall, and all of them definitely thinking about the team positions on the day and what they need to do to defend those. A pretty good, solid buffer for Next, presented by Insured, as they're at 587 to 560 for Abus Synergy. It's a solid 27-point spread for them. But Arnie Jacobs and Planthrow, they got 3 seconds. Neil Fretto and Ruben Dant, Richard Berry, all looking to get involved if they hit that dirt section. This is not dirt, actually, just so everybody knows. The kind of gravel-looking stuff does act like regular pavement. It is going to be the dirt they were just on that Ruben Dant and Richard Berry are coming off of just now, that they were able to get a little bit of a gap on that slows the riders down. Well, Planthrow, 6.7 on the front, continues on. Going to get joined by a few riders here. There is still a gap, it looks like, to Freyette's wheel. You can see that Golden Tron just on the back as Freyette just latches on. Arnie Jacobs continue on at 6 watts per kilogram. In the main pack, though, Lionel Viasen does not have a teammate up there from the coalition. So Viasen now looking to close this down without any representation. Planthro sitting on the back of that main group now as Viasen is now just barely getting a gap between himself and the main pack, but I think he knows that this is all going to come back together as he gets just 4.8 watts per kilogram. Not going to come over the top in order to try and keep the speed high. Arnie Jacobs, though, still fully committed at the front end of this group. Now backs off to 3.4, though. Planthro, will he now jump over the top? Yes, he does. He is completely committed to this because he knows. The reality is here, it's not necessarily a course that favors him as anybody that comes over the top for that Shisa sprint. He's not going to be able to beat them. So he still has a few chances, though. There's still the corkscrew. There's the dirt before the corkscrew. There's also the flat before the final climb into the Shisa sprint. It's a great time to attack, actually, if you want to make things really difficult. So Planthro still with a few sections to make things difficult, but a lot of riders been sitting in, getting a free ride, Hannah.
They certainly have. And I think that also comes down to the little bit of patience that they have. And if they are still feeling good, they've still got something left in the tank, they're playing the waiting game, waiting for the finish, try and get a really high position, and also try and go for the victory. That's also important. Don't forget, this is the penultimate round here of the Zwift World Series. We've only got one more round to come. And if you're wanting to try and take an individual victory, or indeed be up there in the team classification and try and win with your team, or at least be on the podium, Nathan, it all counts. It's all really important to make sure that you have that in the forefront of your mind.
Yeah, 100%. Every single position is going to count. Now, one interesting fact is that all of Next esports riders have made this front group. So they still have 4 riders. It is their best 3 that are going to end up scoring for them. So they're set up in a really good position, actually, to try and extend their lead. And what's interesting to me is that, again, we have not seen them really put any kind of work into any of these chases or anything. So I really think that they've been really smart about reserving their power. We saw Zach Neer for just a moment on the front on the Tempo KLM, but obviously they've shown up for the team competition today. So be on the watch out for Nicky Hug, Zach Neer, Richard Berry, James Barnes, and what they're going to try and do in this final to try and set themselves up best for that team competition. I have a feeling that we're going to look at them trying to stack the top 5, but not risk too much. Look at Planthro again. And look at the front of the pack. 3 watts per kilogram, 1 watt per kilogram, and everybody just watching him ride away. And Hexagon, they can just sit at this point and watch their teammate go. Kaminsky ramps it up a little bit here and just make sure that the speed, that's all you really got to do too. Just ramp it up just enough that the speed gets high, and then it takes the motivation out. Paniza now up in 8 watts per kilogram. Now maybe Ricardo Paniza says, no, I'm going to actually make something happen. Gets up into this little bit of a push. Nope, not going to happen, it looks like, as the pack is very motivated, Hannah.
Yeah, they certainly are. They're really motivated, aren't they? And once again, it all comes back to heel. 5.5 kilometers to go. Just over 1 hour of racing is complete. And now it starts to get... It becomes open, doesn't it? And you can almost start to see and sense that the teams are wanting to try and gather themselves up towards the front. Richard Barry is there, the Irish champion, he was pretty active earlier on, Nathan. But then since, sort of around 6, 7, 8 kilometers into the race, then he's been quiet and he's kept his powder dry.
Yeah, and now as we start to set up here, it's 5.1 kilometers to go. You're really running out of opportunities. Nice little push here. Who's this? Again, Planthro goes again. And here's the thing is, are you just setting up for Neil Freyette to out-sprint you at the finish? There's a reality of trying to beat Neil Freyette on the day. If it does come, if he's able to hang in. A lot of aero power-ups have been saved. Barely any were used up and over the top of the Tempo KLM. So we are going to see a flurry of speed and timing. And from what we've seen from Neil Freyette, he has got the best of the speed, the best of the timing. We're about to hit the corkscrew in just a moment. This is most likely going to be able to bring back Mikhail Planthro. Kaminsky now back to the front. Who can beat Neil Freyette in a sprint is going to be the big question on the day here. Has he used too much of the energy in his tank? Watch him for this finish if he can play this perfectly, because he doesn't really have any teammates to work for him out here.
And you can just spot him there in that white jersey with the purplish shorts, just sitting alongside Alvarado. Vidal Mel just on his wheel, the rider from Movistar in that blue jersey. Watch out for that duo. You get the sense that Vidal Mel has just been watching and following Neil Freight for some time now, and knowing that he's one of the big outright favourites. As you can see in picture, Neil Freight, the rider from the USA of Saris, 145 beats per minute currently, putting out 6.2 watts per kilogram. That equates to just over 420 watts currently. Meanwhile, there's a couple of riders who have gone off the front. Ricardo Panizza, Johan Noren, who we've already seen very active already. Plantarou is just starting to get distance from that duo. 4.5 seconds now, 5 seconds to a handful of riders.
Now, one really great to see Yonsei Honda in here, the Japanese riders making the front end. Absolutely great. This rider, another one to watch out for a sprint. We have seen him win some big sprints actually and pull off some miracles, honestly, amongst these big crews. Now with 6 seconds, this is good to see, actually, because Mikel Blanco, Ricardo Panizza, as well as Johan Noren, breakaway specialists, that's what they love to do. These three riders will have all the motivation in the world to work together because they know they bring any of that pack together. I mean, Gel Power, we've got Jasper Paradines, we've got Neil Freight. Those guys in a sprint, they don't have a chance. There's just the reality that, look, even if I get third, it's better than the reality of that crew sprinting against me. So I have a feeling these guys are going to go all in, work together to get to the line. Now the question is, who behind is going to have the motivation to chase them down with the pack? Because you're just working for the big sprinters. This really turns into a tactical masterpiece between all of these riders.
And it has been tactical, hasn't it? I mean, this is incredible from these three out front here. Noren, Panizza, Plantarou. Where's the charge going to come from behind? What they got left in the tank is the crucial question here, Nathan, because this is not the first time we've seen each of these three riders who have the advantage right now. 5 seconds is the gap to Kaminski. Anna Jacobs at 2.5 seconds. The rider from Movistar. But when you've been so active, how much have you got left? And also, from behind, where's the move going to come from first? Who's going to be the first to strike? And who's going to be the first to try and make a move? As Arnie Jacobs is about to bridge across and make it 4 riders who are out front with 2.1 kilometers remaining.
And Ruben Dant sees the writing on the wall now at this point. 9 watts per kilogram from Ruben Dant before they even hit the climb, actually. Ricardo Panizza at the front, 6.7 watts per kilogram from him. We're only 1.9 kilometers to the finish. The sprint's going to open up at the top of this. It is a little bit of a downhill into a long stretch. It's a very tricky sprint. Johan Noren now rotates to the front, and this is their only chance. These 3 riders now make it 4 riders. 5 riders, even as Ruben Dant looks to go across, and now the whole pack sits up, and Neil Freight's not getting a free ride. Jasper Paradine's not getting a free ride at this point. The race is up the road, and this might be over. Neil Freight now hits the front, 7.8 watts per kilogram coming from him. The Golden Tron, your Zwift Games winner. Will he be able to close this down, or is he just sacrificing himself for the entirety of the pack? There's so many tactics out on course as Johan Noren continues on, all the motivation at the front, but now you've got Ruben Dant with you, a rider who can come over the top of almost every one of them. And will he have anything left when they hit that final sprint? Because he put in a massive effort to make content, now trying to recover at the back now. Will they be able to get rid of him? I don't think so. I think this is Ruben Dant's race to lose if he can just hang on.
When you start to see that time gap start to yo-yo, he's half a second in arrears currently. He's starting to close things back, and he's made it on. Ruben Dant, the Belgian rider, has made it into the wheels and into this group as now Noren starts to make a huge acceleration. He starts to stretch forward, as does Panizza. De Hond is right on the wheel. Plantarou and Jacobs are starting to get distance currently as Arne Jacobs he uses his aero power up from the back of this group here, bringing himself back into the frame.
Yeah, and that was just a suffering power-up. That's all that was. Arnie Jacobs was about to get dropped because Michael Planthro does not want to sprint. He is going to just turn the screws now as much as he possibly can. He doesn't care if he's a lead-out man for these other riders because he does not want anybody coming to him to the line. But Ruben Dant says enough is enough. 10 watts per kilogram. It's game over. Ruben Dant's going to win this one, I think, outright. Up and over the top. Where's his aero power-up? It hits the negative 1% gradient. Planthro trying to get back on terms. Ricardo Paniza might still have a kick actually to the line. 400 meters to the line. Here comes an aero power up from Johan Noren. Who still has an aero power up left? Are they waiting? Are they waiting for it? Here comes another aero power up. Ricardo Paniza now using it. Ruben Dant, is he just waiting to use his power up? There it is. Finally from Dant. 11 watts per kilogram for Ruben Dant. Is he going to throw this down? The Zwift Game second overall is actually going to take down one of his first races. Ruben Dant again shows he's the new startup in the elite racing. Oh my gosh. Dant does it again. Paniza comes across for second, it looks like. Neil Freyet not able to actually take the field sprint, it looked like to me, as he just got nipped from Stefan Van Elst, I believe. Ruben Dant, though, goes across, sits in, waits for his moment, and comes up over the top of Planthro's attack. What a move by him. Paniza able to throw down for second, followed up by Planthro. Wow. Amazing racing. Hannah, a race of attrition, really, at the end of the day.
It really was. That was incredible. It was tactical at times. It was attritional throughout. It was incredible. And that was a superb victory from Ruben Dant, the Belgian rider from Aber Synergy. He wins ahead of Ricardo Panizza, Michael Planthro, well-deserved there in third place for the Frenchman from Hexagon. Johan Noren takes fourth, Jasper Paradines in fifth. Neil Freyet, one of the big favourites for today's race, taking sixth. Stefan Van Elst in seventh, Kjell Power in eighth. Nicky Hugen ninth, with Lano Vyazin running out the top 10 for Team Coalition at 4 seconds only in the end. Ollie Jones in 11th. He was, of course, the overall leader in the individual classification coming into race 4. Adrian Alvarado, Vidal Mel, Joe Pirot. Zach Nair in 15th with Adrian Le Griffin in 16th. Sebastian Havo in 17th. Yonsei Honda in 18th. Great performance from him tonight. Martin Mertens winning that Preem in 19th with Michal Kaminski in 20th. It was a good moment for Mertens taking that Preem, taking in one of his last esports races. But what a performance there, Nathan. I mean, that was a special performance from Dant.
Oh, it definitely was. We look at our finish line podium there. Ruben Dant making the move, jumping across, hanging on, and then sprinting up over the top of Planthro's, essentially trying to break everybody, ends up being the lead out. Paniza ends up playing the smart cards, it seems like to me, reserving as much energy, not just barely missing out on the sprint with Ruben Dant. Now looking at the preems, it will be Neil Freyet for number 1, Johan Noren, and then Ricardo Paniza. Freyet with that breakaway situation and a jump up and over the top. It was Martin Meritons up on the top of the Temple KM, followed by a nice one by Adrian Alvarado from Wahoo Esports, followed up by Jasper Paradines for preem number 2. Now remember, it is prize money down through the top 10 for the overall, as well as these preems, and there is prize money on the line for the team classification as well on the day. We'll have to wait and see how that played out, because interesting enough, I only saw 2 riders in the top 20 from Next presented by Insured, and they are the current leaders. We may see a little bit of a change-up, actually, in the overall for the teams, Hannah. Now, Hannah, I really, that race was a little bit different than I thought it was going to be. They were attacked nonstop. Like, I actually thought they'd be waiting for the key moments out on course, but these riders were not messing around. And I think maybe with a little bit of a reduced field, seeing some of the hitters that were out there for Zwift Games, perhaps they were thinking, look, there's some opportunities here to make some breaks happen. And I think some team tacks were playing out there as well.
I think so. It was certainly very different to how I imagined and I envisaged the race to unfold, because I did think that things would start to fragment a lot more on the Temple KOM. And we did see some high pace being set. We saw a couple of riders try and take a little bit of an opportunity, but it wasn't as fragmented as I thought it was going to be, and I certainly thought the group was going to be a lot smaller than it was, particularly going over the top of the KOM. So in that respect and in that regard, very, very different to what I expected. I thought maybe it would be a chase group who was trying to come back, particularly on the descent. They wouldn't be able to use that opportunity to recover on the descent, and then they'd be chasing and constantly trying to get themselves back into the race. And as it transpires, it was very, very different. We saw that many riders were very active. They wanted to try and do something. They wanted to be bold and try and force a move off the front. Two riders stand out for me, Jonathan Orr being one of those, and the other, Michael Planteroux. And to be honest, when he got caught for the umpteenth time, Nathan, I thought, well, surely he's not got anything left. There's no way he could be in a group and in a move fighting for the win again, but he just proved us wrong.
Yeah, he did. And, you know, it was Ruben Dant, who we're going to talk to now, and maybe hear his story on how that all played out, because Planteroux was extremely aggressive. I want to hear, though, from our winner on the day. Ruben, it's good to see you. How you feeling after that win?
I'm a bit cooked right now because I did the late move towards the breakaway, and that almost killed my legs, but luckily I had a good sprint in the end. And also, yeah, the pack coming closer was also very risky, so I had to launch very early, maybe a bit too early, but yeah, I had still enough power in the legs, so luckily I could hold them off.
Yeah, and I think everybody kind of knows, if they've been watching esports for quite a while, coming over from the running background, this being your first year of seriously focusing in and jumping on Avis Synergy, I mean, it's a pretty big leap from top level of ZRL, getting involved, just wanting to qualify at this elite level, and now second over at Zwift Games, winning a ZWS. Are you surprising yourself, Ruben?
Well, I know I had the potential, but yeah, I was always focusing on my other sport, my athletics career. But yeah, when I switched 100% to esports, all my trainings were different, specifically for e-racing. So I knew I could move up quickly, and also by learning a lot of the Zwift craft during little races, but also some bigger races. And I think it's just all coming together the last weeks and months. And yeah, I hope to become even better from here on, I hope.
So can you tell us a little bit about your tactics? I mean, we didn't see you on the front much. I did see you try and make some covers when things got, what I would say, kind of dangerous, riders who might be a threat. But it did seem like you had sat in and waited for your moment. How did you know that that was the moment to go at the end? When Planteroux, because you didn't follow him over and over and over again, but that final one, you said, okay, that looks like it's going, it looked like.
Yeah, so basically my tactics were a bit similar as during the Zwift games, and that was like ignoring all the intermediates and just save all my power for the final. And I knew people like Arne Jacobs and Planteroux and Noren were like, yeah, they don't have a very good sprint, so I know they would attack. But of course I couldn't go with them the whole race, because otherwise I would blow up. But when I saw that there was a gap of, I think, 5 to 6 seconds, and I tried to bridge, but I was not 100% sure, but I saw that I immediately had a gap on the guys behind me. Then I just went full. I used my momentum also, and then I just kept pushing, and I saw no one in the wheels. So then my finish was basically the front group. Then I could cruise a little bit and then go all in for a long sprint, because yeah, I knew the pack was also speeding up. So there was no chance in keeping, yeah, in saving myself in the final. So I just had to launch early to avoid being caught back by the peloton.
Well, it was an amazing job and very well planned and tactically executed. Ruben, congratulations, and thanks so much for giving us your time. Congratulations on that win.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Well, great to hear from Ruben and hear about his tactics out there. I think we have a couple of replays to take a look at how things played out throughout the day and the men's race before we head on over to the individual classifications and the women's race that's coming up in just a moment. This was the initial sections up and climbing out of Umezi toward that first sprint, but we did see a breakaway succeed, Hannah, didn't we, to grab those first preems?
We certainly did, and it was pretty impressive, wasn't it, to see that they managed to stay away and take those that preem. Of course, Neil Freyet taking that one ahead of Johan Noren and Ricardo Panizza. But this man was impressive for me. Jonathan Orr, the amount of times he attacked, he started to get dropped, he started to get distance, and he managed to pull back. But this was the moment, sprinting so ferociously. Neil Freyet, look at what it takes to go for a preem here, Nathan. You can see how difficult that kind of effort is. It's all in, and there's no surprise really when you put so much into a preem. At some point, you never know if you've gone a little bit too hard, a little bit too deep, and in the end it's maybe affected your overall result in the actual race. But nevertheless, very, very impressive indeed.
It all came back together over the top of the rooftop. There was a breakaway that did try and form through that sprint section over the top of Freyet's kick there. Vyasen, a little bit of a move here. This was interesting. 3.3 watts per kilogram is all he was doing. So obviously everyone was like, this isn't really going anywhere on the downhill for rooftops. You can get baited into try and make something happen because the speeds do get pretty high. But all calm through here, and then we started seeing moves again from none other than Jonathan Orr, and he was off the front for quite a while. He actually gained up to about 30 seconds at one point, and you can just barely see his avatar up in the distance there through those switchbacks, but he does have about 30 seconds through here, 20 seconds or so. Ben Meer continues to hit the front and keep that within striking distance, perhaps. Jonathan Orr there he is with that gap. We were all kind of rooting for him. It was not going to happen as they hit this section, and he was quickly caught as we saw Zach Neer make his way to the front for the first and only time, perhaps, throughout the entirety of the race. The catch here just about to be made. Neil Freyet on the back, just biding his time. But now we're about to see one of the coolest moments in the entirety of the race. The KOM, Hannah, it was really hotly contested, but a man that we're about to see retire from esports was able to make it happen, wasn't he?
He certainly was, and having watched him for so many years, Nathan, you can't be anything but happy for this man. What he's achieved in esports, the fact that he took the Preem, Madden Maddens, the German rider, and this was the moment where, as you can see, it's Kaminsky currently who's up towards the front, and then the move started to go from Madden Maddens, and he dropped that aero power up. It was all within the plan. You get the sense that was the strategy all along. Drop the aero power up, go for the preem, and he did it with some daylight between him and the next rider. And when you take a look behind, Adrian Alvarado taking second, Jasper Paradines in third. It was a really good move.
It really was. I love to see how committed, Martin Meriton, he's a very experienced esports rider, and he knew, looking at what the pack was doing, that he could grab that preem with that aero power-up. It was a complete sacrifice at that moment, though, knowing that he would not have it. And you could see everybody else had reserved their aero power-up thinking that they wanted the win. So, nice move by him. Arnie Jacobs looking to make a move here off the front. Neil Freyet looking for the cover. We can see Planthrow going across. This is the downhill section where Vyasen then, from Coalition, shut things down pretty quickly. Again, toward the end of the race, it's really kind of his signature, Planthrow, right? Go again and again and again. He is the man of attrition, and he actually made it succeed. Now, it didn't necessarily play out for a win, but it definitely played into his cards because he didn't have to end up in a field sprint at all.
If you're capable of doing that and you're able to recover quick, it wasn't the first time, second time, or third time that we saw Michael Plantaru attack. It was the umpteenth time that we saw him make a move. And so if you've got that capability and you've got it in your legs, he's basically riding to his strength, his strategy. And in the end, to be quite honest, come the finish, and we'll see it very shortly, I thought he was going to be able to take it, despite all of the efforts that he's already made. Of course, you saw that it was Don 2 came with so much power and speed from behind. He started to lose the wheel here at this point. But Don went early, didn't he?
Sprint. Yeah, Don, huge sprint there. And I think because he knew it wasn't a field sprint, that he could just go all in like that. And there's the celebration, and nicely done. Here is the individual standings after round 4. It is going to be Ollie Jones holding on to his nice defense, I got to say, by Ollie Jones to hold on to that top spot. Jasper Paradine's sitting in second place. It is going to be Ricardo Paniza, followed by Joe Perot. Neil Fret moves himself actually up a little bit into fifth place. Nikki Hug, Lana Viasen in seventh. It's going to be Johan Norn, Martin Mertens, and then Adrian Le Griffin. Jiao Power sits in 11th place, followed by Richard Berry. Miguel Planthro in 13th. It's going to be Vidar Mail in 14th. Yunsei Honda in 15th. Arnie Jacobs, Ed Laverick, Adrian Averlando, Harvard Yeldings, and Sebastian Pivot. That is your top 20 in the overall individual standings after 4 races. So, well, we're going to be jumping into the women's racing, though, in just a moment as we exit the men's. They are starting in just about 4.5 minutes, it looks like. Hannah, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, me too. And particularly if the men's race was anything to go by with how open it wasn't predictable at all. So I'm looking forward to it. Again, a long race. It's going to be a race of attrition. Let's try and see, and let's see who's capable to try and top things today. As you take a look at the standings here, Nathan.
Yeah, and the women's top 20, this is going to be Catherine Furr, Kristen Kolchinski, Mika Soderstrom in the top 3. Ariel Vaharin showing up. Good to see her back in the elite racing of esports. Watch out for her. I'm excited to see what she can throw down. Lisa Harmonson, it's going to be Cecilia Hansen and Nevin. Liz Van Howling, Alice Lethbridge, and Charlotte Kolkloff. That's your top 10 as it stands. As we move over to the, I believe we got top 20. It is going to be Jenny Eck, followed up by Sarah London, Maria Marb, Christine Schneider, and it's going to be Gabby Guerra in 15th, Jacqueline Godby, Stephanie Sidlick, Nicole Meyer. That is a name to watch out for, everyone. Nicole Meyer, she has been absolutely on fire, as well as Maria Holdcroft. Although sitting in 18th, 19th, and 15th, 3 riders that definitely you want to watch out for, followed up by Laura Meyer in 20th.
When you take a look at the top 10 in the team standings, it's Ionian who tops the standings by considerable margin over the coalition. The Wahoo Esports is in 3rd place, followed by Cryo RDT, who aren't far in arrears. Next to Esports, powered by Insured, are in 5th, with Saris Esports in 6th. You've got Team Swedish Zwifters, who have got 408 points. That puts them in 7th place so far, with Movistar E-Team in 8th with 390 points. You've got Beast Mode powered by Rose with 349 in 9th place, with Team Castelli powered by Elite, who round out the top 10 with 319 points. But right now, it's Ionian who really are stealing a march currently, Nathan.
Yeah, they're hard to go by. One of the best teams in the world. Now, the Open Qualifier, they happened back in November, and it had some awesome racing. We actually have this great little highlights package to give you an idea of how things went down on this exact course before this elite race. Well, it was a great qualifier, and this course, I think, has a lot of opportunities. We just saw in the men's race constantly attacks going down. There's a lot of preems out on course for some motivation. What do you think, Hannah? Do you think the ladies are going to be attacking, or are they going to be a little cagier today?
I think there's going to be a bit of both, to be honest. I think we're going to see some riders, some teams who are wanting to try and take things up, make it attritional. They want to try and anticipate the race. So if they can get themselves a bit of a head start, you never know what that might lead to. But I do think there's going to be others who are going to watch out for each other, particularly the climbers. They're going to have to try and do something, I think, Nathan, in getting a gap, not leaving it too late. And I do think in the women's race, we're going to see more attacking, big punchy attacks on the Temple QOM.
Look at Catherine Furr on her golden Zwift Games
Wow.
bike. Love to see it. And this is your current leader, 224 points. But Kristen Kolchinski is in second place, a good climber. And I think Kristen is very motivated to have a really good race. You know, this is a rider who is so experienced, both of them extremely experienced. Both of them were on the same team actually last year. Now, not on the same team any longer. Mika Soderstrom, though, sitting in third place overall, looking to defend that spot, only 2 points behind Kristen. So when we talk about the overall standings, Catherine, Kristen, and Mika are kind of a conversation that I wonder how we're going to see a narrative play out in this race today because of those three. Then we got some riders who aren't involved necessarily in the overall, who are extremely strong, right? Gabby Guerra, we're talking Nicole Meyer, Maria Holdcroft. Are they going to be given a leash to go, perhaps? Because they're not involved in the overall quite as much, and that Kolchinski, Soderstrom, and Furr start watching each other, or is there a lot of motivation to take down the win as well?
Yeah, this is what I was thinking before when you start to cancel each other out, but others are really bold and they're brave and they want to try and make a move, and if they can get themselves up the road, they can attack. It depends very much in a scenario like this where you are in the overall standings, but also where are you sitting in the team standings, Nathan? Because if you're also having to play the team role and you want to be up there and maybe you're in 4th or 5th position and you want to try and make it onto the podium, when you take a look at the gap between Wahoo Esports and Cryo RDT, there's not all that much difference between them. When you take a look, it's 9 points between the two teams, and so for Cryo RDT, they'll be wanting to try and nab that podium placing in the team's classification. And then Coalition, they've got 565 points. They've only got 12 points of an advantage on Wahoo Esports.
And I'm just noticing, I didn't realize Lucy Charles Barkley was on the start line. That throws a whole nother wrench into all this because she likes to just attack for all kinds of reasons. Merle Bruni is here as well on the start line. The German rider, another big name to watch out for. Now, okay, the level has just gone up a whole nother, really, with those riders being, I mean, really, those are two triathletes who can just set a tempo at the front all day long. And if they get into a breakaway situation, they are danger women. So the German, showing up today, Bruni, be on the watch out for her. I was actually just checking out some of the in real life KOMs. I didn't realize she's second overall on Sal Calabra, which I climbed just a couple of days ago. Actually, that climb is essentially a women's Zwift race. I was looking at the overall, and it was Eiley Gardner, Merle Bruni. I mean, most of the riders who are in this race are holding on to the top 10 on that climb.
It's pretty telling, isn't it? I had seen the Queen of the Mountain actually on Strava on Psycho Lobra, and seeing that top 10 and seeing so many familiar names who are up there and who are racing week in, week out, but also real key figures in a lot of our big races in the Zwift Games and here in the Zwift World Series. Great to see Lucy Charles Barkley. She had a wonderful performance in the first round of the Zwift Games back in early March. Let's see how well she's been able to hold that form. She's setting the pace at the front currently.
In the try position, too. Getting nice and warmed up and getting the skills in for holding on to that position for high power. She sits at the front at 3.4 watts per kilogram. Megan Rathwell there as well. Tiffany Penner. Be on the watch out for her, the Canadian national champion. She's got a good kick on her if she can hang on up and over the top of the climbs. And see Kimberly Hoekstra. There's your third overall in the Zwift World Series, Mika Soderstrom, as she makes her way up toward the front. Very calm at this moment as Rachel Brown hits the front. Good to see Rachel here. It's interesting as she is maybe going to be playing a role of a team member who tries to set a high pace to keep things difficult for everybody else for that team.
We saw Lucy Charles Barkley in that try position on the aero bars, on the extensions there, and you'll see varying different styles and positions for riders, Nathan. How much do you think that has an advantage to you when you're on the bike, or how much may it hamper you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's definitely something to be said for different genres, for different positions on the bike. And in esports, you can kind of just not care about being aero at all, right? Like there is no need to think about that. So I think that Lucy Charles Barkley is definitely focused on her main discipline, which is triathlon and a time trial position. And so she's making sure that she's training that and getting a crazy workout and effort, as well as competing. I think she just want to show up and compete, and she obviously finds herself off the front a lot and getting, a really solid effort from that. I do think the reason that she's in that position isn't necessarily about the power that she can produce, but more about the training and not getting away for what she needs for her main discipline. At the same time, it might be what she's really used to at this point, so why get away from that? Hey, Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's curious, isn't it? How, for different positions that you're having to put out the power, how you want to race here. But it's just interesting to see. Nicole Meyer there, you can see in the picture-in-picture. It's already started to see a couple of riders start to be distanced so far, Nathan, who are already finding themselves in difficulty. Things starting to open up ever so slightly. We've seen Tilly Field, who has been distanced already. She's around 13, 14 seconds in arrears. Group of around 36 riders.
Might have some travel legs, perhaps. I know my legs are not feeling great after a lot of flights and things, as she was just at the Zwift Community Live, which I have to say was one of the craziest, amazing experiences I've ever seen in the cycling industry across the board. And Tilly Field, I think maybe just making sure that she's showing up and getting herself into the overalls, but perhaps not having the best day after a lot of travel, I believe. Now, we did just see Nicole Meyer a moment ago, and that is a rider we need to watch out for, because she has really made a jump at this moment, in my opinion, from mid-pack to solidly on podiums in the top 10, top 5 overall, over and over again. And, I have a feeling Nicole Meyer has taken it to another level, the next rider. So be on the watch out for her for a big result today. It would be really cool, actually, to see if she can hit the podium. Well, Lucy Charles Barkley with a little bit of a push off the front for just a moment. I did see a couple of riders responding to that, as it looks like she was trying to just maybe cause a little bit of mayhem. Quickly gets covered, as Roberta Bassoni, Catherine Furr, now also covering that. And knowing that Lucy Charles might be able to get away here. Love to see, look at all the Scotties. Obviously, everybody's got their streak going on. For those that don't know, it is the new fun setting. Literally, if you go into your settings, it's in the audio and video settings, I believe, and you go through and you can see that there's a new setting called the fun or no fun for your streak preferences. And so you can have Scotty in your back pocket. There's 3 different kinds of Scotties, actually, and I think it's after 24 weeks you get the animated Scotty. So Maria Marva showing off her 24-week streak.
That's pretty fun, isn't it? I like it. Combination of your ride-ons there, Nathan, with your Scotty in your back pocket. It's also a bit of moral support, isn't it, in a race?
Oh, I love it. It's really great. And if you're wondering what that's all about, if you ride every week, you can build up your streaks on Zwift. And so essentially, just to make sure you get one ride in per week, you start getting this counter on your profile, and as you build that up, you can get an upgraded Scotty. So there's one that's a medallion, and then you get another one that's not animated that's in your back pocket, and then you get this little animated 3D Scotty if you're past the 24 weeks. So pretty cool little addition. It was an April Fool's joke up front, and everyone had to ride with their Scotty in the back. And then after April Fool's, you had to turn it on. So if you were wondering where Scotty went after April Fool's, you actually have a setting which you do need to go turn on if you want your Scotty back in your back pocket. So go find your fun setting and turn on the fun. If you're a no fun guy, well, I get it sometimes, but I personally like having fun.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Well, Christine Schneider looks like she's having fun on the front as well. She's up toward the front at 3.0 watts per kilogram. It looks fairly fun, actually, in the pack at this point because the pace is not too high. So we're not into the Type 2 just quite yet, it looks like. Because everybody's playing a pretty cagey ride. The only move we've seen so far have been from Lucy Charles-Barclay. So it is a little bit calmer situation than what we saw in the men's race. I think that with the women, they are going to be looking towards some key tactical moments out there. And we do tend to see this with the ladies in esports. They do tend to really have a plan. Things are really mapped out. And then everything pops off with crazy fireworks. Once in a while, you'll get a race that people try and make moves early on, or you get somebody like Lucy Charles-Barclay who just likes to throw the cat amongst the pigeons over and over again. We'll see if she continues to do that. But I have a feeling this is going to be the name of the game today, looking for those key moments. The next section is going to be the preem. We'll be coming up, I think, in about 7K, maybe a little less than that or so from now.
How much do you think the fact it can be quite cagey early on might affect things towards the back end, and particularly once we start to get towards the climbs? Because, of course, riders and teams don't want to burn their matches and waste energy in the early part just to try and force an attack. I guess everyone wants to try and stick to their strategy that they've planned coming into this.
It's a really good question because there is the reality that if you make it too easy, riders can just have a really good day and then hang on, and there can be a little bit of an upset. It can change things up if you let a rider sit in who's just on a, they've got that extra match on the day, and the expectations that you had for the status quo of where people have kind of found their pecking order amongst the crew gets disrupted because people sat in too much, didn't make the race hard enough. So that can change things up a little bit. The course is long enough, and there are enough pinch points that I think the riders may have enough to, you got the first preem. After that, you may see a counterattack. I do think we are going to see somebody give a go for it, though, before the sprint itself. I have a feeling there might be a couple of riders that go, look, I'm going to throw down and see if they let me go, or at least ramp things up. But there is a defense, though, of the overall. There's a good chunk of cash on the line for the top 10. And some people are thinking, look, I'm not risking anything for this overall. I'm just going to defend my position, right? So you're looking at riders like Cecilia Hansen, Ann Nevin, Liz Van Houweling, Alice Lethbridge, Charlotte Klokloff, all sitting in that top 5. Lisa Hermanson. They're all there in that top 5 thinking, look, I have the opportunity to bump myself up into 4th or even 3rd place. I am not going to risk anything, and I'm going to get as many points as I can today. So they're just going to sit in and wait for the opportune moment rather than waste anything. There's a lot on the line for them.
There's a lot on the line, and also you can't blame them, particularly if you're well placed and if there is a lot of money on the line and they go in with the strategy, and whether that's to try and finish highly in the standings or indeed try and take the money at the preems. You can't blame them. It's it's a really handsome and generous offering, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And that's exactly what I would be thinking about is, where do we stand in the overalls and how do I protect my position? Now, there's a rider like Merle here, though, Brune, who currently is not anywhere in the overall. 38th place currently in the overall. She's got one ZWS on, but she took 74 points in that one, a massive result, actually. But, there's a reality that she's not involved in the overall. She doesn't have anything to defend except for preems and the overall cash on the day. So I have a feeling that Bruni is going to be somebody to watch out for to try and make some moves out here for a single race. A very different tactic from this rider than everybody else. I think there's just a long lead in. Now Mika Soderstrom, 3rd overall, exactly the opposite of Bruni, right? Mika, she's just thinking about how do I defend my 3rd overall or even get better. She's only 2 points behind Kristen Kolchinski. Now, Kolchinski, what she's going to be thinking about is how do I get rid of Mika? That's all she's going to be thinking about is like, how do I get rid of Mika or even get rid of Catherine and win on the day today to close down some points. So I have a feeling that Kristen Kolchinski, a lot is on her shoulders. Solo today, riding for Virginia's Blue Ridge 2028. There are no other riders out here on her team. Melissa Aitken, I'm not sure that she's shown up on the day today, so there's just a reality that Kolchinski has a lot on her shoulders to pull off. Tiffany Penner, though, Nicole Meyer now following it up. Nice little move. Like to see this from Tiffany. I think this is all about the preem.
Yeah, I think so as well, where you can see that she's wanting to try and get that advantage, get that gap. Nicole Meyer is the rider in second wheel who's trying to bridge across to Tiffany Penner. Gabriela Guerra is trying to come across as well. 1.7 seconds is the deficit. Behind it's Kimberly Hoekstra, the Dutch rider, who's in fourth. Things start to and continue to open up, and Penner's really striving to move forward here to go towards... We're taking away Meyer and Guerra. This is a really dangerous move. You can see Guerra and Nathan, and you know Gabriela Guerra very, very well. No denying that. But for Guerra, I hadn't expected her to make a move so early.
This is really interesting to see, actually, and the reality of Fur sitting in 5.1 watts per kilogram on the front now at this point. Penner now, she's going to be fully committed, I think, Penner. She wants this preem. Catherine Fur only 4.8 watts per kilogram. Nicole Meyer now open over the top, and with Guerra involved here, this is what we were talking about earlier on. Catherine Fur is interested in securing her overall, and that's all she really cares about at this point, right? So because of that, she's not going to drag everybody around. 5.6, okay, perhaps she's starting to get interested. Now Merle Bruni now says, okay, look, I'm here for the solo effort on the day. She kicks up in the 6 watts per kilogram. They've got 7 seconds. Elise Gallegos now, the teammate of Guerra there from Wahoo, covering Merle. Kristen Kolchinski covering it as well. Now Guerra continues on at 6.6 watts per kilogram. This is all about a preem, but it's also about the win on the day, because if Guerra gets the gap here, she's a rider that can ride away all day long as she pushes 6.87 watts per kilogram. This is all in from Guerra super early on. Dangerous move, but also a lot of energy to expend.
This is a lot to use up, but the thing is, Nathan, and very often in certain races, and depending on the parkour, you say, okay, you've got one attack, you need to use it wisely, and if you go all in and really capitalize, and you also use the course to your strengths, and also, take a few riders and rivals by surprise, because I don't think people would have been expecting Gabriela Guerra to go quite so early, and we've still got 42.8 kilometers to go. We've got, just a little less than 5 kilometers to go until we get to the preem itself. But look at the gap and look at the distance, and that's only going to continue to grow. 15 seconds, 16 seconds, that's going to get to 17 seconds. And then behind Nathan, who is going to be the team? Who is going to be the rider to try and pull this back? And that is the big question. And meanwhile, Guerra is going to be head down, full focus, and trying to maintain a really consistent output here.
She's at 17 seconds. I mean, if Tiffany Penner doesn't get caught, I think Tiffany is going to get caught. There will still be a fight for the third place on the sprint, but this is cash in the pocket. Unless Nicole Meyer catches her, Guerra's going to grab this. It's almost up to 20 seconds at this point. Guerra's the kind of rider at this point that could just continue to ride away the rest of the day. And she's got the kind of effort up and over the top of every single one of these climbs. If everyone just rides cagey, there could be riders that come across to her, and then at that point, it becomes a very different kind of situation. But this is insane. This might be the race-winning move right from the get-go. I was not expecting this at all.
Likewise, and you can see Nicole Meyer, she's not giving up the chase here. 4.7 watts per kilogram, little bit of an acceleration out of the saddle, 3.6 seconds. She started to lose a second or two here. I was going to ask you, if they go through the preem and Gabriela Guerra takes the first prize at the preem, Nicole Meyer hangs on for second, what do you think Guerra should do? Do you think it's beneficial to have someone to help?
Nicole's strong enough. Nicole is strong enough that it would be beneficial, but the reality is have you burnt her out already? Right? I mean, there is that reality that Nicole just might not have anything left in the tank. Look at Nicole, 186 beats per minute. She is going to take this through here. Now, at this point, there will be a little bit of a sprint. We'll see how much time gets brought back. The other question, though, is it's a hard decision, right? do you wait up for Nicole? Does she actually have the effort that you need? I think Meyer is at that level at this point that she would be able to give you some speed, and the two of them could just essentially walk away with first and second if they're able to really work together out here. And I'm not seeing motivation from this pack behind. I am seeing nothing but watching each other for something else on the day. This might be just done, really. And Nicole Meyer now ramping it up. Garrett's going to hold on to 5.0 watts per kilogram. There's a little bit left here to this sprint. Now, there is a little bit of an uphill. A big question that is going to come in just a moment here is, what is that pack going to do every time it hits an uphill? Are they going to get super motivated to make a chase? This is already 35 seconds. I mean, do you start getting into the mentality that you're racing for third place at this point?
You'd hope not, particularly with 40 kilometers to go, but it comes down to what we spoke about earlier on of the strategy between riders and teams, and what are you going for? Are you going for the individual overall? Are you going for a team classification? And when you take a look at these two riders who are out front now, Gabrielle Guerra is 15th overall, she's got 149 points, and then with Nicole Meyer, she's 18th overall with 129 points. So they're not two riders who are going to challenge Führer, for example, or Kulczynski. And so, of course, those two riders, Kulczynski and Führer, are going to be watching each other. They're going to be, really keeping a close eye, because this is the penultimate round, and they want to make sure that they don't lose it here, because they'll have a lot to do in round 5.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, there is a reality that the riders behind with another race, so it's not the final race, that also throws a little bit of an extra tack in there, doesn't it? Because Führer, as well as Kulczynski, they're going to be only thinking about their points overall. Now we say Merle Bruni. This is what I was expecting. I was 100% expecting her, and now there's Maria Holdcroft as well. Both riders that only care about the win on the day. They're going all in at this point. Now the chases are starting to happen. Now, if they keep on doing this over and over again and then watching each other and do it again and watch each other and do it again and watch each other, they're going to be burning a lot of matches, actually, that perhaps are going to slow things down if they don't just fully commit. Eventually, a team is going to have to commit, or a few riders are going to have to commit to working together if they don't get the break that they're looking for. Because Merle Bruni, as well as Maria Holdcroft, they are not interested in just pulling everyone along all day long. They're going to look at it and go, come on, put some work in here. So this is going to get really cagey in a moment. Now Maria Holdcroft heads to the front, 3.4. Führer's there as well. Kulczynski now up into 7.7. Interesting enough. Gabrielle Guerra still holding on to about 4 seconds. Nicole Meyer holding on to that 3-second gap consistently between her and Guerra as they head into just 500 meters. This is going to be the preem. Looks like both those two are going to take first and second. In just a moment, we're going to see who's going to take third.
The gap's only started to come down, but that's only because of the ferocious tempo and the pace that's being set going into this preem here, because of course third place is still up for grabs. There's only been around 2-3 seconds that has been brought back to Gabrielle Guerra so far. Right now we're under that 40-second marker, 160 meters to go until Guerra will get to the first preem of the day, still behind Nicole Meyer. She's still holding that 6.5 second gap very, very well, and she's been doing that for the last 2.5 kilometers or so. Through the preem, Guerra takes it. She takes the prize money, she takes the points, and it's going to be Nicole Meyer who's going to sweep up second place here. The fight for third behind is firmly on. It's Thompson who's on the front, the Dane, followed by Holdcroft. Bassoni's there, as is Marb, Giovanni, as well as Brown. Where is the move going to come from for third place?
Lethbridge on the front. No kick just yet. Everybody really calm, actually. Interesting enough. I mean, we're already into it, essentially. No kick. Here we go. The final now. Tiffany Penner now opens it up. There it is. Maria Holdcroft. Big kick. 14.8. Holdcroft, I think, easily grabs that one, as it is going to be Guerra, Meyer, Holdcroft across the line. Now backs off the 3.1 watts per kilogram. Out to 41 seconds, 42 seconds. Holdcroft backs off to 3.7 because of that little bit of a kick with that sprint. Unless we see a counter, I have a feeling that the pace is just going to continue to go out. Kulczynski now looking for the counter. That's what we were talking about. Will Kristen Kulczynski be able to get any kind of a gap and start to work together with Maria Holdcroft? That's going to put alarm bells, though, on for Catherine Führer, who's going to want to bring back anything that tries to get away. Kolchinsky continues on, though, as you can see on the right-hand side there, 5.4 watts per kilogram, as Garrett pushes 6 watts per kilogram. 40 seconds. Kolchinsky caught Fur right on the wheel, and that's most likely going to calm things right on down. Maybe some roll through from some riders who want to pick the pace up, perhaps. At this point, with 15 seconds, I don't think that there's any waiting for Nicole Meyer at this moment. I have a feeling that Garrett's just going to try and continue on as Lucy Charles Barkley comes on through on the front, and that's going to be the main pack doing 49, 47, and most likely slowing right on down.
The thing for me after a preem, and particularly after a sprint like that, is you end up losing time ultimately at some point. The group here that we're looking at in the chase at 41 seconds, because everybody's made such a ferocious attempt, but also that intensity just to stay with the pack, because of course there was the sprint. Whereas for Guerra and also for Meyer, although she's starting to lose time on Guerra currently, you're holding that same pace, you're maintaining, and you're keeping your effort linear. And so over a long period of time, you're not having to recover from these big spikes in your effort.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great point, actually. And, you know, looking at the pack and the way they're riding, I would be pretty motivated. If I were Nicole Meyer, I'd be fairly motivated at this point, actually. You know, Garrett might be getting distance, but you're still getting distance on the pack. They're doing 3.4,
yeah.
3.3 watts per kilogram. You look at these speed differentiations. Meyer's doing 42. Garrett's doing 43 kilometers per hour. The pack's sitting at 35. I mean, there's a massive speed differentiation, actually. I would continue on if I were Nicole Meyer with the amount of effort I've already put in. This is definitely a solid gamble. I get the feeling, because there's so much cagey games going on behind because of these overalls. This is exactly what we had talked about early on. There's a lot on the line for the overalls, and because of that, these riders are watching each other, and that kind of puts Merle Bruni, Maria Holdcroft, and a few of these other riders who are not involved in the overall in an odd position, because essentially they're just working for people who are thinking about their overall classifications.
But look at the time gap now, Nathan. 52 seconds is the advantage for Gabriel Guerra. And you know, I speak about it time and time again. This is exactly where a sports director comes into their own, particularly for Nicole Meyer. She might be losing a little bit of time, a second here, a second there on Guerra, but she's still got 30 seconds on the bunch behind that we're currently looking at. So to have that knowledge, to still have that encouragement, to still have the, you know, for your sports director to reaffirm what you're doing is really important. And so if you can try and maintain and you can try and hold on here, because you are going to see fluctuations, you're going to see spikes in the bunch behind. And so now we start to see Maria Holdcroft attempt to go off the front. She's got a couple of seconds on the bunch, but if it comes back to heel, then the gap's only going to start to go out, and I believe it would go out above a minute. If it comes back together, everyone will look at each other. Who's going to chase? Who's going to be the team or the rider to bring things back? And it's Fiore once again who's on the front, the Swiss rider who has been really, really impressive over the last 12 months.
I have a feeling we're going to start to see a little bit of a handshake, a little bit of like inside cooperation between Holdcroft and perhaps Merle Bruni. But Bruni not able to go across. That leaves Holdcroft, who can do this all day long as well. This is another rider who is a danger rider to just ride away from everybody else. They have that level. And again, the overalls are starting to come into the reality of who chases and who doesn't. As Holdcroft now goes to hold 5.5 off the front on the chase. She does not want to let Garrett just get away and walk away with this one. But now the question is, you don't have a 50-second gap any longer. You don't have this massive padding to work with. And because of that, you might get caught on the climb. It's a bigger risk now for Holdcroft, right? Because she didn't roll the dice as early, where Garrett rolled the dice very early. Now Holdcroft has a lot more of a risk to work with to get caught on the Temple KOM or to get caught on the Castle KOM. And so because of that, she has to work that much harder to close down, or at least get the buffer she would want to work with. But it's gone up to 10 seconds already. I mean, this is a pretty serious gap now at this point that Holdcroft is working with.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And I think when you start to see 15 or 10, 15, even 20 seconds, and when you've got a rider like that, and particularly with maybe some of the games, you could say, and the strategy and tactics that are playing out behind you, it really bodes well. It works well and into your favor. 12 seconds now, the advantage. 13 seconds for Holdcroft over the group that's being led by Bruni. Maya's still out front, though. She's still got that advantage, and if Holdcroft can get to Maya, potentially give Maya a little bit of respite, give her a wheel to sit on, just to get some recovery. But nevertheless, we're
that's
almost
a danger,
near
actually.
it now.
Yeah, we are, and that's a real danger, actually, for the pack, as well as even for Gara, to have Holdcroft and Meyer to be able to work together, right? And be able to try and eat away at the advantage that Gara has now started to open up. And Maria Holdcroft now is able to hold a solid 6. She has not found herself out in front as long as Gara as well. So she's going to be able to match perhaps some of that energy that Gara's had to throw down early on. Merle Bruni now hitting the front as they hit the climb up into 7 watts per kilogram. This is where they're going to want to really start to turn the screws to try and make something happen, try and bring back a little bit of that time. There's also a lot of speed on the downhill on the other side of this. That is a section that Gara and Holdcroft, as well as Meyer, are going to have to really think about how they attack that downhill, because on the downhills, this pack is going to have a huge advantage on them as Kolchinsky hits the front, 6 watts per kilogram. Merle Bruni is there as well. Liz Van Houweling following the wheels very closely as things start to get into that straight line, as they're starting to try and hang on to wheels. Riders starting to go out the back. This is going to be the first point where people are going to start getting whittled out of this pack. Oh, the catch is made. Holdcroft now gets to Meyer. Can she hold on? Maria Holdcroft now going right on by, it looks like, 6.6 watts per kilogram. Nicole Meyer up into 6.8, looking to hold on to the wheel. Will she be able to just get onto that wheel of Holdcroft? Holdcroft continuing on. 38 seconds is all the gap is to Gara at this point. Meyer now able to just barely, well, she's still got just barely trying to hang on. I'm not sure she's going to be able to do it now. Backs off to 4.9 as Holdcroft goes right on by. Maria Holdcroft now, 5.9 watts per kilogram, 344 watts as she looks to hunt down Gara. Can she go all the way across is going to be the big question. Merle Bruni now still at 7.2 at the back here, at the front of that main pack. 102 is the gap up to Gara now for Merle Bruni and the rest of that pack, trying to perhaps split the group a little bit and not put down too much work for everybody else to just follow along, as Bruni now 4.7 backs off a little bit, looking for a little bit of an elbow, maybe a little bit of a come on, roll on through, and Furr says, nah, I don't really got to do any work. I'm just defending my position. I'm not coming on through, as she just settles things right on down and the pack slows down. It's 104 at this point. Massive gap still. And Nicole Meyer going backwards, still fighting her best, though, to hang on to that third place overall. Gara now kicks 8.79 watts per kilogram up and over the top to try and get the speed as high as she possibly can. Maria Holdcroft only 36 seconds behind as she kicks up into 6.76 watts per kilogram. Massive from them. There it is, 58 kilometers per hour. That is, they're looking for that 57 is the magic number to be able to get any kind of super tucks. They're going to be looking for that free speed as much as they can, Hannah, on the front end of this pack, of this race.
Yeah, they certainly will, and I think crucially it's the free speed, but I don't think we can underestimate how hard this race has been so far. For Gabrielle Guerra, she's been the standout rider thus far, and of course having that 1 minute and 7 gap to the large group, the peloton behind. But for everybody else, it's a case of take the respite, take the recovery, and surely at some point we're going to see the fireworks. That's all I can think. You know, you still got 31.2 kilometers to go. There's still a lot of racing to be covered, a lot of kilometers to be covered, and anything can happen. And I do think sort of once we start to get towards the Castle QOM and then up to the Temple QOM and up to that Preem, ultimately we've got to see some big moves start to go from the group behind. They've got to try and do something, because right now, of course, it's not the terrain for it. That's one thing. It's not the terrain to start to bring things back. But which team has the numerical advantage? who wants to sacrifice? Who's up there in the team standings but doesn't want to sacrifice their riders to have to close this gap right now, Nathan?
It's a great question, actually. And looking at the teams here, I'm looking through, and there's also the reality that I think it's Wahoo Esports that have the numbers, perhaps. They got Elise Gallegos. They've got Mika Sodas. Mika's here as well. I have a feeling that with those numbers that they have and the power that those riders have to cover moves, Rachel Brown is there as well. So having 3 riders that are able to sit in, follow moves, make sure nobody really is able to put anybody, just cover things over and over again. I just get the sense that perhaps it also might be putting a little bit of demotivation, right, into the other teams with Wahoo just able to cover everything that you are doing. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to cover and kill to make sure that just continues to go out. And so at this point, we've got a TT effort of Maria Holdcroft versus Gabby Guerra. And this has actually been a big conversation across the world of women's cycling esports for the last 3 to 6 months, actually. Is this Maria Holdcroft versus Gabby Guerra situation as well? Maria Holdcroft, somebody who has been up and coming into the podium situation, looking for her big win over and over again. And she's taking the risk right now to try and get that big win, to come across and be one of her nemesis, actually. Gabby is essentially like that next rider to take down on the list of those who are in and amongst the top tier. And Maria Holdcroft, she's proven herself. We saw it in Zwift games. Can she do it? Can she come across? Guerra's going to put down a ton of energy early on here. She's really looking to try and get as much distance as she can. And how demotivating would it be if Holdcroft comes across and is able to grab onto Guerra's wheel? Now, she's going to have to break Guerra, though, Hannah, because the reality is, in a sprint situation, usually Guerra just has just enough, especially up and over the top of a climb. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that the key thing is, if you start to see the time start to fall, Nathan, will that mentally do something to your psyche, seeing that you've had this great advantage, but you've got one rider who's chasing behind, and will it start to deflate you? Will it motivate you and think, right, I've got someone in the chase, I need to continue to hold this gap and really make it difficult for Maria Holdcroft to try and bridge across. She's still got a healthy advantage, though, Guerra. She's still got 37 seconds on Holdcroft, and both riders are in that similar situation. Like what I said about Nicole Meyer and then Gabby Guerra, for Maria Holdcroft, she's 19th overall in the individual standings with 128 points. So, for anybody else who's up there leading up in the high placings, sort of podium placings, as you like, for the individual classification, they're also not worrying about Maria Holdcroft right now. It's really interesting. It's intriguing as well.
I love what I'm seeing from Nicole Meyer here. We had talked about her being an upstart, somebody who's new to the top level. If she's able to hold on to this, it would be such a breakthrough ride for her, and it would establish her in some ways. It's one of those confidence rides, too. Even if she does not hold on to this, this shows that she is amongst the top elites. She can hold on to a gap like this, even build a gap like this. There's a lot of respect for a move like this as well. I'm loving this to see from her. And this has just been in the last 3 months or so that I've seen her at this kind of a level. And I just really got to give a shout out. Nicole Meyer, absolute hero on the day. And I really, for her sake and the reality of this new level that we've seen her to, I hope she hangs on to this third.
But it also seems as though she's recovered. We saw her go through a little bit of a rough patch, and to be quite honest, there's no surprise, because it was a hard moment in the race. She was one of the protagonists, and you can see the way, even just her body language, she looks like she's recovered. You can just see her there taking on some fluids, taking on a gel. She's still got that advantage. She's still got 35, 36 seconds on the large peloton behind. And when you take a look now, Guerra has 1 minute and 32 seconds. This is phenomenal. It's almost as if, from the group behind, the chase is gone. The impetus is gone. Everybody's watching each other so closely that this is working into the hands of the Brazilian.
With that much of a gap, too, you think you're going to close down a minute 30? You need the pack. You're like, if I go off the front at this point, what am I going to do? I'm going to get what if I go off the front? Chase down and waste energy? So at this point, I think you start to get into maybe we go hard enough over the top of the KOM to bring some sort of time back. I mean, maybe, you start getting into a lot of maybe gamblings, right? You start getting into a lot of, well, let's see what happens later on, because at this point, I'm not risking anything with the reality of how much time's between me and anybody else there. Because if I catch Nicole Meyer, that's not going to do a whole lot, and it's just going to end up with me and her maybe working together to maybe hold off a pack. Maria Holdcroft's a whole nother situation, but she's over a minute ahead now as well. I mean, for this, at this point, I really do think they're racing for maybe third or fourth place on the day.
And it's only going to continue to extend this advantage. And taking a look at what's happening at the head of the bunch there, Lucy Charles-Barkley's been able to claw back some time. She was distanced and she had lost around 5-6 seconds off the back of that group, whether she had an issue, whether she had a problem. Nevertheless, anyway, she's back in the frame of things, and you can see she's gone straight to the front of that bunch already, the British rider. 1 minute and 47, though, it's a lot of work to do if you want to try and make a dent in this.
100%. Now they're taking on the dirt sections. These are interesting sections to see how they do tackle them. The different tactics, we did see a little acceleration from Gara actually through the dirt, maybe to just get a little bit of speed, and then some speed over the top off of the dirt onto the pavement. Now we do see her backing up. The first time I've seen Gara actually below 5 watts per kilogram, maybe just getting a little bit of reprieve, a little bit of energy into the body. Nicole Meyer bumping up to 5.1. There's Gara's avatar on the Golden Tron earned at the Epic race just a couple of weeks back. She pushes out 260, 270 watts or so. Holdcroft looking to match. And that becomes the game, doesn't it, Hannah? The game now is watching the other riders' watts per kilogram and trying to match or better them all the way through toward the end of the race. And trying and judge what the speed differentiations are. You can see Holdcroft, a solid 45 there. Gara, 41. But a lot of times, those differentiations do matter only from the ups and downs that they do experience throughout the entirety of the course, actually. Nicole Meyer still. Look at Nicole Meyer. She's almost out to a minute now at this point. This pack has sat up. Incredible. This is going to work out, I think, for Meyer. This is great to see, actually, for her.
It is, and you've got to be happy for her, because it was a bold, brave move. There was points where she looked like she was really going through a bit of a tough time, because when you've overreached your limit, and of course you start to look at the way that Guerra left everyone else behind. But for Maya, she's not given up, and it's really impressive. I think it also shows she's a tenacious rider. She is a brave rider, but she's incredibly strong physically, in great form, very clever as well tactically, and I think a brilliant strategy from Nicole Meyer. And okay, she couldn't hold on to the wheel when Maria Holdcroft made the junction, when she made the catch, but nevertheless she's got exactly a minute on that group behind, being still led by Lucy Charles-Barkley and Merle Brunet. What a turn up for the Bucks, huh?
Well,
what a totally different race. And I think this is the beauty, Nathan. We've seen 2 races this evening, and okay, we've still got 24 kilometers to go in the women's race here, but 2 very, very different kind of races. Both the same course, both the same distance, but the tactics, the strategy, the way that they've been raced, polar opposite.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very different. The early attack, usually they don't stick. That's the other thing. And in that situation, for some reason, everyone just watched one of the strongest riders we've seen in esports go across to the gap created by Tiffany Penner and Nicole Meyer, and nobody responded, thinking, oh, it'll come back, and usually these don't, and somebody's going to do something, and eventually nobody did anything. And Gara said, look, I see the door open, and I'm going to take that opening. Kicked the door down and said, all right, from here on in, I'm all in on this one. and immediately it just went out. And what's great, though, is that Nicole Meyer jumped onto the back of that, got some advantage, and has committed to this one as well. Now, there's a big question mark, though, about what's going to happen over the top of these climbs. A lot of time can be made up. They are very difficult climbs. There's 23.3K to go. I don't know. That's a lot of time to make up, though. I really don't think that this is coming back for any of those top three. I think this is a battle for fourth place in the overall classification at this point. It's going to be very difficult. The real battle for the podium at this point is Guerra versus Holdcroft and what kind of climbs they can throw down after essentially what has been a 45-minute threshold effort off the front of this peloton.
Threshold effort, we're throwing into the mix some VO2 type climbs, 3-6 minute climbs. It's been really an impressive performance here from Gabriel Guerra. However, Maria Holdcroft is holding steady here. Before we saw the gap hovering around 39, 40, 41 seconds. 34 seconds is not all over for the victory. I think for the top two placings, we could almost call it's going to be between Guerra or Holdcroft. But right now, Holdcroft is not giving up. And I think particularly when you've got the possibility of a victory, and you can almost smell the victory, you're so close to it, that pain in your legs somehow just dissipates. And it's full gas all the way to the... You're almost riding on adrenaline, Nathan.
Yeah, 100%. And Holdcroft's forte is the ability to just have a really, really consistent pace. The only thing that I would say is that she has the advantage on the flats. She has a bigger engine when it just comes to raw watts, whereas Guerra likes the uphills a little bit more. Holdcroft can climb really well, but not quite as well as Guerra. So the question will be, how much extra kick does Guerra have over the top of each one of these climbs? How much can she distance herself from Holdcroft through the climbs, or has Holdcroft saved enough to actually close down on the flats and the downhills and keep Guerra within striking distance? So that's going to be the big question as we hit each one of these climbing sections, as to whether or not Holdcroft can match the reality of Guerra's effort as Holdcroft kicks. I mean, she's only at 172 beats per minute, so Holdcroft may be saving something for these climbs, actually. She may be the rider who's actually been measuring her effort well enough to keep Guerra within striking distance as Guerra now hits these flatter sections up into 38, 41 kilometers per hour, continues on, gave a little bit of a punch up onto the top. We did see 6-7 watts per kilogram for a moment there, so I have a feeling she does still have enough in the tank to keep the pace high, but Holdcroft is hunting. It's only 33 seconds at this point, so it's a good point. Holdcroft can taste something perhaps, smells a little bit or tastes a little bit of blood in the water.
And I have no doubt about it. We saw, and I said it in the men's race, that you have to use some of the flatter sections of this course and the downhills as a moment to get some recovery, get some respite, because it's such a long race. You have to look after yourself, because each and every acceleration that you do is going to burn those matches. But try and use the course where you can to your advantage. And maybe for Maria Holdcroft, knowing and thinking, well, I'm not as good a climber as Gabriel Guerra, but if I just hold back ever so slightly, and I hold 5% back on what I normally would be able to do on the flats, then maybe I could put something into the climbs, and maybe I can try and make the difference, because this has been a long attack from Gabriel Guerra. She's been out there on her own. It's been a fantastic move, far earlier than we might have anticipated, but she's anticipated the race. And for everybody else, they've been caught napping, they've been left chasing. 33 seconds, it's not all over at all for the victory.
No, you can see how they're fighting each other. You can see how they're fighting the terrain against each other over and over again. Holdcroft kicks up into 6 at the different little undulations. Gabby Guerra goes up to 6, now back to 4, uses the terrain to their advantage how they can. Look at Holdcroft though, still 6.1 over the top of this 2% gradient or so, keeping it very consistent. That's the name of the game for her at this point. Just steadily hunting all day long. But behind, Sophie Giovanni. 2:39 back now. Merle Bruni now as well, starting to head to the front as the group behind starts to get into their groove when it comes to these climbing sections. Out to 34 seconds now again, a little bit of a time advantage to Gara. Nicole Meyer still stuck in the middle of all of this at 5.2 watts per kilogram, keeping it steady as well at 291 watts is what that is for her. Cecilia Hansen now taking over at the front, part of the leading team actually, which is Aeonian. For the overall, Cecilia Hansen, Catherine Furr also representing Aeonian, as well as Leonie Harper and Vicky Whitelaw on the day today. As we take a look at the pack, it is going to be Merle Bruni back to the front as they now head a little bit downhill for a second. They're about to see that same section we just saw from Gara Holcroft and Meyer. It is a left-hand turn and right on up into the Castle KOM. A nice little brick or cobbled section. I don't think they really feel that or have any kind of slowdown through that section, but it's definitely a little cobbled section. It's a steady 8 to 7% in just a moment that they will see. As we'll see if there's any more splits as they look forward to the Temple KOM. Now, the preems are all up the road, unless Nicole Meyer or Holcroft or Gara are caught. But I have a feeling that those preems are said and done. So really, these riders are thinking about how they can split things for the final.
Absolutely. I have no doubt that the preems are done and dusted for the top three and behind. If they're wanting to be up there in the preem, no chance. You've got over a minute to close. And so behind it's about trying to limit the losses. I'm trying to think, Nathan, of a race where we've seen such an advantage for a solo rider that's genuinely been a big contender for a victory. And it's not been a case that it's been, sort of an 80-kilometer race where you've got time to bring things back, because Guerra, there's no stopping at all. But I don't remember such an advantage so early on.
That's a really good point. Have we ever seen anything like this in cycling esports, actually? I am not sure. I mean, we've seen advantages like this middle of the race, going up the grade, but never just, okay, first 5K, boom, go, see you later, and it's game over. I mean, talk about showing up with a mission. And to be honest, I'm obviously pretty close to Gabby. My eyeballs are wide open, like, what is going on here? I mean, this is, and we actually talked a little bit beforehand. I said, Gabby, we had plans about different sections and all this stuff, and I said, you do what feels right today. You do what you think feels right when you feel the race, and it looks like this is what felt right.
But I think that's also what makes a good racer. Someone who can race on instinct. Someone who can feel the race. They can feel the legs. They know their own body. They know exactly how they're feeling. And you can try and take the advantage. And that's exactly what Gabriel Guerra's done. If you've raced on the instinct, you know what you're capable of. You know what you can sustain for over an hour, which, we're coming up to 53 minutes of racing completed. And I think for Gabrielle Guerra, she's been out for what, 46 minutes of that? 45 minutes of that?
This will be the key moment, though. This Temple KOM is going to tell us how I think this race is going to play out. Whether or not the gap opens or closes over the top of the dirt climb, because this is where the most can either be made up or lost between the riders here at the front end of the race. And it's also going to tell the story behind in the main pack. Nicole Meyer and whether or not she's able to hold on to that 1 minute gap, that can be shut down on this climb. And Kristen Kolczynski is going to be looking directly down the barrel at Catherine Furr thinking, okay, what can I do to throw down and take down Furr? That is all she's going to be thinking about, I think, for Kolczynski. So I have a feeling, be on the watch out for Kristen Kolczynski to throw down some monster watts on this climb. I would have no, I don't think her coach, Josh Lipka, is going to be in her ear. And I think telling her exactly when to make the moves and when to see if they can make the break, and pulling her back in if it's not going, or encouraging her on if she does get any daylight. But Merle Bruni is here. That's somebody who could follow any move, I think, by Kolczynski. Who else is there? Lucy Charles again there as well. Breaking fur is going to be a big ask today.
To turn it on the flip side and to turn it on its head, we're talking about this gap and this advantage, and riders and teams need to get themselves together, and perhaps actually it's too little too late. But actually, do you think that for many riders here who are fighting for overall positions, particularly in the top 8, top 7 placings, they're actually happy with the situation? Maybe they're happy with the way that the race has unfolded. They're watching their nearest and closest rivals. You can see Kristen Kulczynski. She doesn't look stressed. She doesn't look like she's panicked. Clearly communicating with her sports director. And of course, she's the only rider represented from her team of Virginia's Blue Ridge. And so for Kulczynski and for others, maybe they're very happy the fact that the race has gone up ahead.
Yeah, it's a good point. Perhaps they're like, look, we can just play to our strengths here at this point. We don't really have to think about anybody else disrupting anything. You can do the calculations now and go, I don't have to worry about getting beat at the line by this rider or that rider. There's some riders that are not as disruptive that are going to be involved in here now. So it's actually a good point that it creates a little bit of a extra control factor about what you can anticipate. So pretty happy with it. Perhaps. It's interesting to see that, man, still pushing 6 watts per kilogram at the front of the race. This is a massive, massive effort still. Now, here we go. Catherine Furr, though, this is going to be the moments to tell us how things are going to play out. Again, remember Mika Soderstrom. We haven't talked about her in a while. She's sitting 3rd overall, only 2 points behind Kristen Kulczynski. So that's another rider that Kulczynski's going to be thinking about trying to get rid of to not be a danger woman any longer. Because if Mika Soderstrom is able to hold on to the end of this race and outsprint Kulczynski, she could put herself in a good position to overtake her for that 2nd overall as well. So Mika's got a good day today as we look at Gara again. Well, this is the section, of course, here that the riders get into the final little bit of a kick. It does have that little downhill we talked about. If they were in a pack, it'd be a totally different situation. A little bit of a downhill and then kicks up again where you get the most amount of speed over the dirt sections here, up into that 10% gradient, 9%. You got to kick it up over the top to get a lot of speed on through toward the KOM. 7.38 watts per kilogram, knowing this is a massive section for time to be gained, going out to almost 40 seconds again, as this was, I know, reconned specifically to try and take this KOM, but there's no pack with her this time, and she's going to throw down just for the show, it looks like, to come across the line for another preem in the pocket of Gara. And this race number 4 in the Zwift World Series, Hannah. What a ride.
A phenomenal ride. She's going for the triple. Taking the 2 preems, taking the victory on the night overall. Clear as day. Maria Holcroft, she'll hang on to take 2nd place at this preem. Nicole Meyer, she should just about hold on and take the 3rd place. How things might change, and heartbreakingly starting to see, well, Meyer's got 2:13 in arrears on Gabriel Guerra. Melanie Bruni is leading things behind at 2:57. It's not too much of an advantage if Nicole Meyer's really starting to suffer and struggle now, Nathan, with that advantage.
Yeah, it does look like it's coming down pretty quickly. Look at Bruni, 6.5 watts per kilogram. They're climbing much faster than what we saw from Gara and Holcroft, obviously being fully rested. And that is going to put the crosshairs directly on Nicole Meyer to try and bring her back, as Meyer's only doing 3.4. Now looking for a little bit more, it looks like, to try and just hold off that chasing pack. She's still got a little ways to go. It was a full 2 minutes, so yes, there's quite a bit of distance now. Bruni now backing up to 3.4. That's going to give Meyer a little bit of wiggle room to work with now, up into 5.8 again as they start to look at each other behind. So, because of the caginess, because of the game is being played, that's again playing into Meyer's hand a little bit. I think she's going to hold on for this one, at least for the preem. Now, on the downhill, might be a totally different situation, though.
Yeah, no doubt. And particularly when you see these really steep gradients. And if you're in that deficit, Nathan, and this has been a tremendous effort, a tremendous performance from Nicole Meyer, but you get the sense that, and now we start to see things really open up at the front. It's being led by Merle Bruni, also Kristin Kulczynski. And when you're in this situation and when you've got such a charge behind, that's when you start to see your advantage really start to crumble.
Whittling down definitely happening. Mika Soderstrom at the back, and if some of the other teams, especially Catherine Furr and Kristen Kolchitsky, start to just sense a little bit of weakness in Mika, they are definitely going to press the pace. Now we do see Elise Gallegos is still there, so she's going to be able to cover any kind of gaps that do get formed for that Wahoo Esports. Remember, Elise Gallegos, Mika Soderstrom, teammates, working together most likely for Mika's overall on the day here. Now, this isn't going to necessarily ramp up, I don't think, because there's nothing on the line right here. No preems to go for. So at this point, they're just seeing who made it. And what do we have now with this main group situation? We've got what seems to be, I'm looking at about 11 riders, with Elise Gallegos, Merle Bruni, Catherine Furr, Mika Soderstrom, Liz Van Houweling has made it. Marlene Vjarhid is also here. Lisa Hermansen, Cecilia Hansen, Kristen Kolczynski, Cornelia Engstrom, Roberta Busoni is there as well. Stephanie Sidlick. So that is your top 11. They've got about a 6-second gap to a chase group of 2 with Kimberly Hoekstra and Camelia Alberg. And then behind them, Maria Marb and Tiffany Penner, also a chase group of 2 that might want to try and come back. And they actually may be able to do that with the way that this group is kind of watching each other. Gara, you can see, ramping it up over and over again at the front, looking to use that downhill to her advantage as best as she can with those super tucks over and over again. Crazy how evenly matched the 2 of those riders are, with Gara and Holdcroft holding consistently right around that 33 to 36. Looking at Elise Gallegos though, 100% out there today for her teammates. I know for sure she is there to support Mika.
And this works out perfectly for Wahoo Esports, particularly when you take a look at the team standings. They came into race 4 third overall with 553 points. And so this is really impressive. And if they can score big, of course, for Guerra, if she goes on and ultimately takes the victory here in race 4, and then if Elise Gallegos can perform well and position herself high up, they're really challenging for the second place overall. And if not, I mean, you never know what might happen after race 4, and particularly into race 5. But they're going to certainly open up that gap and the advantage, and the very small advantage that they did have over Cryo RDT. And so right now, Wahoo Esports came in, they've thrown the gauntlet down, and they're going to spend big.
Liz Van Houweling making up over the top of this climb. That's a big danger threat for a sprint, actually. If Liz Van Houweling is able to hang on all the way into that final sprint, over the top of the final climb, she has a massive kick on her, actually. And it could be a breakthrough ride for this year for her. Great to see the next esports presented by a shore rider. Now we can see Maria Holkoff trying to get out into that super tuck. Solid speed here, 54, 55, 52 kilometers per hour. Going a little bit slower maybe than she was looking to through this section, as it goes out to 40 seconds. So losing a little bit of time on the downhill, actually. So perhaps not riding the downhill quite as tactically savvy here, as Gabby's been able to get into a lot of super tucks here, I think. As Holcroft goes back into 5.2 watts per kilogram or so. Gara back into 6.2. Nicole Meyer still holding on to only 30. Oh, it's coming down. This is tough now. Meyer, yeah. I have a feeling the catch may be made here. She's been off the front for so long, Hannah.
She's been off the front for a long time, and it's what I said before. As soon as you start to have the action behind from that group, and you've got that select group of 11 riders who have got the advantage, they've really started to fragment behind, and now they've got a little bit of impetus. However, riders are coming back, and whether that will disrupt the chase behind to Meyer, and whether she will indeed gain a handful of seconds again, and that will play into her hands, because if everybody starts to look at each other in this group, or whether they go straight to the front of the group and then start to work, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You really hope for Meyer that she'll hang on and take her third third place, because this has been such an incredible performance from her. And, you know, she's put up a good fight, I've got to say. She's still holding steady. She's got, 25 seconds, 26 seconds, 27 seconds and growing, 28.
Yeah, and as you can see, for Meyer, the reality of the downhill is the section where they would usually bring her back, but everyone's going so calm through here. They are not really getting into their super tucks. They're not very motivated, it seems like, to really make the chase or that concerned about catching Nicole, which is odd to me, honestly, that there isn't even... It's almost free speed to give little punches at the front. So it seems like there's almost an agreement to not bring her back in some ways at this point. Or maybe they're just not thinking about it that much or trusting that it'll come back. But if this is the calm that happens as they hit the flat sections, she will have an advantage if they continue to do this 2.6 to 3.5 watts per kilogram. Meyer, I think, can hold a steady 4.0, and that may give her just enough space to work with. Although the corkscrew climb, the downhill into Unimezi, as well as the final climb, it's a lot to try and take on with only a 30-second advantage.
But if you were a sports director, Nathan, what would you be saying at this point? Are you saying, right, we want you to save as much energy as possible and try and go for at least fourth place? Because if you catch Nicole Meyer, then you're still racing for third. What do you think the sports directors should be saying? What do you think their tactics should be, particularly at this point in the race where, for me, it's all but too late?
It's a good point. I do think for riders who are here for the single-day race, though, I would be super motivated to get those speeds high on the downhill because it's almost free. You just do a little kick, you snowball through, and you get everybody up to 57 kilometers per hour. And then everybody's kind of going fast enough to easily bring Nicole back for free, and that gets you another spot to fight for on the day. And so I'm just a little surprised that a few of these riders who are here just for the single day didn't press that pace a little bit. I do think that the other riders like Mika and Kristen and Catherine are not interested in that at all. It just doesn't matter. So the DSs are going to say, leave it alone, no big deal. Merle's really the only one, as well as Roberta Bassoni. I think those two are really the only ones that you could see those kind of moves to try and get the speed up. But I was a little surprised to see them not heading to the front. Well, it's steady 40 seconds now at this point between Guerra and Holdcroft. The group now starting to surge a little bit as far as starting to grow as far as the presence. We just saw Tiffany Penner get back on terms with the main group. So little by little, it is swelling. We did see a chase back also from Maria Marb. So it's gone from about 11 riders to 16 riders at this point. Still a chase from Rachel Brown happening behind. Lucy Charles Barclay as well with Rachel Brown. There's actually a pretty solid chase group containing what is Ann Nevin, Lucy Charles Barclay, and a few others that has 11 riders in there, chasing down a group of 16 that's containing Merle Bruni. As we take a look at Bruni now saying, okay, enough is enough. She's not contained in that any longer. She gets an immediate 2 seconds. Nice little kick. Kolchinsky actually chasing that. And Kolchinsky wants to get into a break. That's what's going on here. She doesn't want to leave this to the last couple of kilometers. She wants to get into a break situation and not have to deal with the sprint to the line as Bassoni looks to try and chase this down. Will she work with Bruni is going to be the big question.
For me, it's no surprise that Kolchinsky wants to try and break away, and no matter what kind of group she's with. We've seen that she has improved in her sprint, but I think she's a rider who she needs to try and get rid of some of those faster, powerful riders who really thrive on punchy sprints, Nathan. And so, to me, it's no surprise she's waited for that moment. It also puts some more fatigue into the legs of those who might be suffering. I mean, we saw those 11 riders. 5 riders joined on the descent. They came back into the frame of things. There's some tired, fatigued legs, despite how the race has unfolded today. And so, for Kolchinsky, she's just going to make sure that this is long and drawn out. However, you can already see that the Bruni's on the wheel, Bassoni's closed the gap. She's only 1 second in arrears and she's still there and hasn't shown her cards too early is Katrin Führer.
Yeah, for just on the wheel, Bassoni there, rolling on through. You can see her in the blue kit, this current series leader. Love to see the leader's kit there. She rolls right on through. And Katrin Führer has played her cards perfectly for the series lead, hasn't she? She sat in, followed moves, making sure she's going to get the best result that she possibly can amongst the riders who are the danger women out there for her today. So over and over again. And even right there, you didn't even see her really stick her nose in the wind. She just followed the wheel of other riders who were closing that down rather than entrusting where she knew things weren't going to necessarily get out of hand. And she does have the kick. She's got plenty of energy left in the legs, Katrin Führer. She's not hurting at all at this point. So I expect really one of the best kicks we've seen in quite a while from Katrin Führer at the end here. She's reserved everything. The story about this situation behind here is going to be the Mika Soderstrom versus Katrin Führer kick to the line, and Liz Van Halen in there as well. That'll be really interesting to see. Merle Bruni is going to try and ramp things up, I think, over and over again with Kristen Kolchinski, especially with Nicole Meyer. Only about 20 seconds up or so. They can almost sense the catch here for Meyer as Kolchinski goes again.
But she's a strong and powerful rider, the Swiss rider, Katrin Führer. And so it's no surprise that she'll have something left. And when you've had a race and a performance and a race unfold the way it has this evening, it's absolutely no surprise. A little bit more of an injection from Bruni up towards the front and Liz Van Hoeling. Oh, and you get the sense, I mean, this is going to be Heartbreak Hotel, isn't it? Only 13 seconds now is the advantage for Nicole Meyer. And with this kind of injection of pace, with this kind of speed behind and so much action now, it's going to be a matter of when, not if.
44.5 kilometers per hour versus 50 plus from that group of 16. It's so difficult, and this is the main section you have to be concerned about with the downhill like that is the group versus a single rider. It's got such an advantage, and that group that is coming down so quickly. Now we're looking at Garrett. There's only two more main obstacles for Garrett versus Holdcroft to take on, and as long as Garrett does not bonk, does not have some sort of massive situation where she just has no more energy in the legs, she most likely is going to take this down. She needs to take the corkscrew on here on the dirt fairly intensely. Holdcroft is now just entering that dirt section that we saw Gara on. She's about to see the dust kick up behind her and see the corkscrew off in the distance. Gara now up into 6.2. This is your first and second place. It is a 39-second gap now at this point with only 3.8 kilometers to go. Not a whole lot can be done. There's Meyer. 10-second gap back to Elise Gallegos. Meyer only at 2.4. Now back up to 4.7. Still trying to hold out for hope, but with corkscrew and the dirt section and a climb still to come, it is definitely a long shot for Nicole Meyer. And as you said, Heartbreak Hotel with such an effort put in by the rider from Next, presented by Insured.
You touched on the fact that you hope that riders wouldn't bonk at this stage in a race, and particularly with the effort from Guerra and also Maria Holdcroft trying to bridge across. What would that fueling strategy be like for a race like this of over an hour? You've got over 50 kilometers of racing. It's so important to make sure that you're fueled and you're hydrated.
It is all about training the gut to take in as much sugar as it possibly can to get it into the bloodstream. So, there's sugar in the bottles, there's sugar next to you in gels, and you're essentially trying to train the gut to take in as much as it can at the right, what we say, osmolality. So what percentage of sugar to water can come across the lining into the bloodstream. And that's right around a 6 to 8% that you want to constantly have in the stomach, actually. And so the rider's going to be taking on a massive amount of liquids, a massive amount of water, and somewhere between, I would say, 80 to 120 grams of sugar per hour, actually, of gels to try and get that in, of carbohydrate. Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot, isn't it? And as you say, you really got to train yourself. And particularly when you're in a situation like this, you certainly don't want to fade towards the back end. And it also shows when you're consistently keeping on top of this. I mean, for Guerra, Nathan, she's been able to consistently average 5 watts per kilogram to 6 watts per kilogram since she made that effort. And to be able to hold that and not fade and not let anybody come close has been so mightily impressive.
Yeah, the reality of not having, we had said at the beginning, Mary-Kate McCarthy here with them. I mean, it's been Mary-Kate McCarthy versus Gabrielle Guerra this entire year. Has kind of been one of the stories, the world champion versus the silver medal over and over and over again. And without Mary-Kate here, I think it put a little confidence in Guerra to say, I think I can stay away with this one. I think I'm not going to be chased down by Mary-Kate, and there isn't a lot of motivation behind. My teammates will do the cover and kill situation, and it ended up working out perfect for her. We just saw the other big name that's shown up this year, Merle Bruni, making a move again, and that's what she wants. She does not want a sprint situation. Merle Bruni is one of those riders. She's a triathlete as well. She wants a long, steady effort, and she's probably kicking herself a little bit thinking, oh, I wish I would have went with Guerra, because those two off the front would have been quite a situation, actually, for a single race on the day. Here we go with Guerra, though. 1.6 to go to the line, just starting her final climb on the Shisa sprint climb, and I think it's all but said and done with 40 seconds to Maria Holcroft. Guerra's going to take another one after taking the epic day at the Zwift Games, the final on the Zwift Games. Now, the first day back on the Zwift World Series, Gabrielle Guerra shows up with a stomp on this one.
And something drastic would have to happen with that kind of advantage. 40 seconds on Maria Holdcroft with only 1,400 meters remaining. Now the worst of the climb is over. It kicks up again to 5%. But this has been a tremendous performance here in race 4 of the Zwift World Series from Gabrielle Guerra. The fact that she took it up so early, it's going to be delight for Guerra, but it's going to be absolute heartbreak for Nicole Meyer, who after chasing valiantly and holding on so well, she's put everything into this. This is going to be so heartbreaking, but chapeau to Nicole Meyer. What a performance. She's brought back to heel. It's Katrin Fura who makes the junction, followed by Merle Bruni, and now the fight for third place is well and truly on. Liz van Houweling moves herself forward, and look at the speeds that are starting to show here.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting now because it's all back together. Holdcroft and Guerra are going to take first and second, but they're still at third place on the line, which is a pretty big payout on the day, as well as a lot of points. We did see Elise Gallegos that was on the front a moment ago on that downhill, rolling on through. So she's going to be setting up Mika Soderstrom, I think. Watch for the Mika Soderstrom sitting on Elise Gallegos' wheel for the setup across the line. Actually, I have a feeling Mika is going to be locked on to Gallegos' wheel. Who else is here though? Does Aeonian have anyone else that could be a lead out for Catherine Furr? No, I'm not sure. So I have a feeling that Catherine Furr is going to be watching very closely what Mika is up to.
Was Cecilia Hansen in the frame of things? Did I just see her name before?
Ah, you're correct. I think you're right.
Yeah, Celia Hansen.
Well, Guerra now. Yeah, Celia Hansen's still there, so that will be most likely a situation for the Aeonian team. Guerra now finally using that arrow power up. Talk about security play. All the way to the finish line with that arrow power up and takes it down. What a move from almost start to finish. I mean, full on, Gabby Guerra shows dominance today. Maria Holdcroft now wanted to make the chase, wanted to close it down. Really, really gave Gabby actually a run for her money on the day out here today. But Maria Holdcroft's going to hang on. Also, with the arrow power up to the line. Nicely done as she holds on for her second place on the day. But behind, we've got something really starting to play out as Maria Holdcroft kicks nice little 9 watts per kilogram and takes down second place. Merle Bruni now starting to ramp things up, though. Third place still up for grabs.
It certainly is, and now it's a little bit cagey. Everybody's wanting to try and follow the wheels. Kulczynski up towards the front, as is Bassoni. Cecilia Hansen is right there, and she'll be trying to look after her teammate in Katrin Führer. But of course, they currently occupy first place in the individual ranking, but also first place in the team ranking. So what can Ionian do into the final kilometre here? Still, wow, 1,400 metres or so to go, isn't it? Starts to plateau, starts to drop off ever so slightly, but it's Bruni who's still leading proceedings. 3.5 minutes is the deficit. Bruni's making an acceleration here.
To try.
She's wanting to open up. Yeah.
This might work. This may work. She's got 8 watts per kilogram, and this is a move where she's like, from here on out, I'm all in. And that's what she's doing. She kicks up into 8, 9 watts per kilogram, and then holds a steady 6. Here comes Katrin Führer. Liz Van Houweling trying to grab onto the wheel a little bit late, though, and I'm not sure she's going to be able to make that juncture here, as Elise Gallegos now looks to try and set something up, as we had said, for Mika. Look at Mika, the Swedish national champion. She is right there trying to jump onto Elise Gallegos' wheel. And Elise is going to look to sacrifice herself, but she just can't do it. Führer now is off the front, and it's going to be Bruni and Führer all the way to the line. I don't think that they're going to be caught. Now, the only way they're caught, I think, is if they start looking at each other. Here comes Kulczynski, now up and over the top. 9 watts per kilogram from Kulczynski, knowing that there goes the race up the road for any kind of points, and she's trying to also break Mika. So this is a good move for Kulczynski if she can go across without Soderstrom, as well as Gallegos able to hold the wheel. But look at Gallegos up into 7 watts per kilogram to try and grab that wheel for Mika.
But we've seen this before, that Krystal Kulczynski, when she makes a move, she can go long. She's got the aero power up now that she's deployed, and she's in chase, and she's going to make the junction to Katrin Führer and Merli Bruni. Wow, we did not expect this. Wow, what a performance here from Kulczynski. She's going to try and take 3rd place on the day. Now the reaction comes from Führer. She's trying to come back to Kulczynski. What has Kulczynski got to respond to? Now Führer goes clear. She's going to take 3rd place. What a performance. Wow, Nathan, I did not expect that.
It was massive move from Kristen Kulczynski. Gave everything she could, and that was all about Mika Soderstrom, I think, for her. She was like, look, the risk here for me is to try and break Soderstrom and maybe go over the top. It was a risk reward with a good payoff still for Kulczynski, but it ended up being a lead out for Führer. So Führer then ends up with 3rd, Bruni in 4th, and it looks like Kulczynski for 5th. And here, across the line, is that our Nicole Meyer taking the final spot out of that main chase? I mean, after being off the front that long, it's going to be a difficult climb to the finish line, isn't it, Hannah?
It certainly is, and you just have to say chapeau, you doff your cap to Nicole Meyer, because that was an incredible performance this evening. And for Meyer to take 19th place and to only lose 7 seconds to Maria Marben and that group. Of course, she lost a fair bit, a chunk of time to Katrin Führer from the front of that group, but nevertheless, really impressive. And I think it certainly bodes well for race 5 in 2 weeks' time.
Sophie Giovanni leading things out for the final top 20th spot here. Anna Svartsom now. Here come the aero power up. This is going to be Ann Nevin kicking as well, up into that 5.8 watts per kilogram, 7 watts per kilogram. Anna Svartsom's got a really good kick, trying to hold off the pack. She had a couple of seconds on them, but no, not going to happen. Leonie Harper, nice little kick for Aonia, and that may matter for the overalls, actually. As she comes across the line, that might have been the final spot for Aeonian. It was Aeonian with 3 riders in the top 20. We'll see if that's enough, though, as we did see a pretty good representation from Wahoo Esports. There's the final, though, for the top 10 across the line. Gabriela Guerra takes it down at 1 hour and 17:55. It's going to be Maria Holdcroft for 2nd. Katrin Führer, your current series leader, defends very well. In for 3rd place. Merli Bruni in 4th. Kristen Kulczynski in 5th. It's going to be Mika Soderstrom in 6th. Marley Darhead in 7th. Liz Van Houweling, followed up by Lisa Hermanson. And then Tiffany Penner rounds out the top 10. That's a great result, actually, for Tiffany Penner. In for 11th, it's going to be Elise Gallegos, followed up by Cecilia Hansen. Stephanie Sidlick, Camilla Alberg. It's going to be Cornelia Engstrom, followed up by Roberta Bassoni in 16th place, Kimberly Hoekstra, Maria Marb, Nicole Meyer in 19th after so much time off the front. Valiant effort for her. And then Leonie Harper rounds out your top 20. Well, it's going to be our podium here, and Gabby takes down that first place. There is Maria Holdcroft in second, Catherine Furr in third. Garrett takes down both preems with the attack off the front, but Nicole Meyer able to hold on for that second. It was Maria Holdcroft that made a giant attack, actually sprint from the main group. That was before her attack, and she was able to hold on to that preem. And then, obviously, it was those three across the line over the top of the Temple KOM, in a little bit different order, with Holdcroft in second and Nicole Meyer in third. So that is the top results on the day. Amazing results for Gara, obviously. Hannah, as you said, a very different race from the men's race. I mean, like from the go, goodbye, and then a battle of three up, and then everybody else watching each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally different race. And that's why we love it, because you can have the same parkour, the same distance, but two completely different races, and so entertaining as well. One in very, very different manners. Shall we have a word with our winner? Because what a performance that was. Gabriela Guerra, first of all, congratulations. That was a magnificent performance. Was it always in the plan to go that early?
Not at all. That was not the plan. I didn't want to suffer for an hour by myself, but yeah, things played out that way, so I took my chance.
Did you expect maybe a few riders to go with you? Were you surprised that, okay, of course you had two riders with you at one point, but did you expect more to be with you?
Well, when Nicole Meyer was like almost on my wheel, she even messaged me, hey, like, if I can be with you, we can work together. And I said, yeah, fine, push, but I can't slow much down because I don't want to lose speed at all. I know it's about every second. So I just kept messaging her like, push just a little bit more, you're almost there, because I was hoping to have someone to work with. But I also at the same time didn't want to gamble too much because that was already a huge risk. So, well, I had to TT my way there. And when Maria then made her break, she kept me right on the same spot all the time, and she did a really good job. It was like double TT, and it was kind of fun too.
Did you ever feel the pressure then when you saw Maria Holdcroft, who at one point was only 33 seconds behind you, and she'd closed a significant advantage? Did you ever start to feel the pressure and feel in somewhat panic?
Oh, for sure I felt the pressure because I know her, like we race each other a lot, and I know she has big watts. So flats and downhills are like even more concentration for me, that I at least keep the gap. And if I give just a little leash, I know that she can come back to me, and I didn't want that. So like I didn't panic because I know I have to keep calm and do the job, but also like watching the gap for sure, and the speed, obviously.
It's been quite a magnificent couple of weeks for you, winning the Epic in the Zwift Games, and then of course taking the victory here. How do you feel? How does it feel to take such a victory and to be in, I would say, arguably the form of your life right now?
I'm honestly super happy and thankful because I've been fighting for a couple months now, and it's been like second place a lot, you know, so like start winning a little bit is quite motivating. The hard work is paying off. I'm investing a lot of work. I have to say I'm a full-time athlete to be able to to perform at this level. It takes a lot of work and passion, but I like doing that. I can do that, so that's why I do it. And yeah, it's just great to see how strong the level has been in the battles between all the girls in the past months.
I think this is going to be a performance that goes down in Zwift racing history with such a winning margin, such a winning advantage. That must make you very, very proud as well to see when you're at the very top level of esports and being able to win in such a manner.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, time trial effort pretty much with the climbs in between that really tests your fitness. So it was a big test for me today, and I'm happy with the outcome for sure.
Gabriela, congratulations. Enjoy this victory. Top job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Incredible.
A little escape quick from the from the pain cave and up into the kitchen as Gabby does the interview. But really, that was a surprise to me. As she said, I didn't think that was going to happen at all. When she went off the front, I kind of, as I said, got a little bit wide-eyed and was like, okay, this is what we're doing today, I guess. And oh, man. And the Nicole Meyer situation is definitely a little bit of heartbreak, and I really feel for her, but at the same time, she really showed what she's got, so pretty awesome to see. But now, in each race of the Zwift World Series, everyone, riders do earn points for their finishing position, as we've been talking about, and that overall really had a huge impact on how the race played out today. So let's take a look at how things actually stand. Catherine Furr did an amazing job of defending her position, getting third on the day. Kristen Kolchinsky, she ends up in fifth, so she also defends her position. She gets only a 1 point differentiation. Mika Soderstrom, we saw the move from Kristen. That 1 point was the arrow power-up and long throw, right? I mean, that was like a Hail Mary from Kristen Kolchinsky to get that spot and that 1 point from Mika to try and secure a little bit more. I think that puts Kristen in a really good spot, though, coming into the next race, which is Power to the Tower, which is going to be a lot about climbing and really favors her. Lisa Hermanson there coming in for fourth, to be Cecilia Hansen in fifth, Liz Van Talen in sixth, and Nevin in seventh. Gabriela Laguerre jumps her way up from all the way, I think it was in 15th into 8th now. So big for Gabby Garrett to get back involved in the overalls. Ari Viharin in 7th. It's going to be Christian Schneider, followed up by Maria Holcroft in 13th. Stephanie Siglet in 14th. Nicole Meyer with a solid effort today in 15th. Alice Lethbridge 16th. Roberta Bastoni is now standing in 17th. Charlotte Klokhoff in 18th. Rachel Brown 19th. And Sarah London holding on to 20th overall in the individual standings. Well, Hannah, a little bit of a mix-up there or a change-up in the standings, it looks like, and some riders really jumping their way up and a few riders falling down the overall.
And there's no surprise when you've got 75 points on offer, and particularly in this case for Gabriela Guerra, who was not inside the top 10. She's moved herself into 8th place there. That's really, really impressive. And so it's still all to play for, but particularly for the top 3 positions on the final race in 2 weeks' time. And when you take a look at the parkour and what they have to take on with 3 ascents of the epic Queen of the Mountain, the epic QOM, it's going to be very, very interesting. And all it would take is for a rider to have a bad day and they fall down the standings, and for another rider, particularly a climber, to have a very strong day, and it could all change. But again, it's unpredictable. We don't know what will happen, but it's certainly exciting, the fact that it's so close.
Yeah, I think that Power to Tower, like you just said, is definitely going to have some change-ups in the overall standings. A lot of riders probably marking this one on their calendar for that race. Well, that wraps it up for the coverage, though, for our race number 4 in the Zwift World Series. And thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for tuning in, everyone, in this broadcast. We really appreciate everybody, and we do see all your comments. You're pretty awesome today. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for the final race of the Zwift World Series on April 24th for that Power to the Tower. Until then, from Hannah and I, ride on.